I'll start out with, in a call to order, our conflict of interest statement. North Carolina General Statute 138A-15 mandates that at the beginning of any meeting of a board, the chair shall remind all members of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest under this subchapter. The chair also shall inquire as to whether there are any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters before the board at this time. Do we have any conflicts? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Also want to make sure we have a quorum, which we do. We're missing several members. Council, we have 11 total members here today.
Yeah.
Okay, it is July. Commissioner Bailey is often in Colorado. I guess I say nobody's having health issues. Chamelski, I don't know where she is. Hardison, I believe, is on vacation. And Bill was with his wife. She was doing some kind of treatment. So nothing wrong with Bill's back this time. He just thought it was better to stay there. So that's why we're a little light. And again, I think our agenda is a little light today too. So it's probably appropriate for today. Let's do the approval of minutes first. I think everybody's seen the May 14th minutes. Do we have any discussion? Yes.
Just a minor request, and this can apply for this as well as all of the others, but just to number the pages.
Number the pages. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. We should. Okay. Commissioner Tweedy.
Just comment. Thank you to the department for the timestamps. I think that hopefully that's not too hard to do, and I think that's sufficient from what my request was earlier. So.
Now we're going to get to, we won't get an update on that yet, but we got to get the agendas posted online kind of thing right too. But anyway, but we got the agendas or the minutes there. So thank you. Any other comments before we take a motion? Okay, do we have a motion to approve? Commissioner Gibson makes the motion. Anybody make the second? Who's got the second?
Sure, I'll
Commissioner
go ahead
Tweedy.
and
I
approve
saw
the
you raise your hand.
minutes.
Commissioner Tweedy makes the second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. All right, we have I'm glad to see Secretary Wilson in the house today. He came with us back in January, and he and I talked at the beginning of his tenure. He really wanted to come to us on a regular basis. So it's been several months, maybe 6 months, but great to see you whenever you want to come. And I won't give you any further introduction other than say, he asked for 5 or 10 minutes just to come see us and visit and make a few remarks. So the floor is yours, Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. You said you had a light agenda, so I'm going to expand my remarks to 30, 40 minutes. Thank you, Richard. Is that better? I'm sure it is. I want to start by thanking all of you for the work you do on this commission. I know it is a lot of work and you put a lot of time and thought into it, so thank you. I also want to thank my colleagues in the room, DEQ employees who are amazing, and I feel lucky to get to be their colleague every day. What I wanted to do this morning is just give you sort of a overall update from the department on our 4 top priorities plus a review of the budget, which we now have. So those 4 priorities are Helene recovery, resilience, forever chemicals, PFAS, and permitting. So I'll do those, a little bit on each, and then talk about the budget. So on Helene, upcoming next week, the 15th, the State Water Infrastructure Authority will meet again. And yet again, they will award more funding for wastewater and drinking water projects, systems that were damaged by the storm. And every one of those projects will make those systems not just repaired like they were, but make them more resilient to what's going to come in the future. Recently was out on Old Fort making an announcement, $25 million spread among 16 communities to repair, expand, make more resilient their recycling infrastructure. So that was a great event. Also recently was in Haywood County and went to the place where they are taking downed trees and turning them into biochar. That was $1 million grant in Haywood County. That's a fascinating process. The 2 nonprofits that we awarded a total of $12 million to, Mountain True and Haywood Waterways Association, continue to send crews out in the streams to take the smaller debris out that wasn't gathered before. I don't have the current number of cubic yards or pounds or tons or whatever, but it is a lot. I mentioned water infrastructure. So far, the Infrastructure Authority has awarded $861 million to communities out in the mountains. Most of that federal money, but also some of it state funding. And that was for 217 different projects. And we will, as a department, reach an important milestone next week in terms of overall funding levels that I can't say today because we're going to announce it next week. I've mentioned this before, I think, but Toby's folks inspected 400 dams, mapped, I think, more than 4,000 landslides. Was also out in Asheville recently to see a mobile microgrid, which can go anywhere in this state and be a community hub for power and cooling and connection. And it's part of a $5 million grant. 2 mobile ones and 24 permanent ones. The permanent ones will be in 6 counties in the mountains. And we're hopeful to get more money to do microgrids in the future. And so it sounds like we're doing a lot, and we absolutely are, but we're sort of at the beginning of this process because every one of those 217 projects, for instance, water infrastructure, it's going to take years to get them done. So we will continue to work hand in hand with those communities as we all move forward to get those things built. Turning to resilience statewide, I know you heard, at least the Water Allocation Committee heard yesterday from Stu Brown, who runs the Flood Resiliency Blueprint, so I won't dwell on that one a long time, other than to say it's an amazing interactive tool that any local government can use to identify where their problems are and prioritize projects to address those problems so they don't get inundated in future storms. And it helps them figure out which projects will give them the biggest resilience bang for the buck. And so far, 83 projects, $44 million. We were down in Bladenboro not long ago for a $1.6 million announcement, which is going to totally change what happens to that downtown when there's a storm in the future. It's taking the water where it's supposed to go rather than filling up downtown several feet. That's just one example. Another thing the Blueprint has done is issued new advisory floodplain maps. They aren't regulatory, they aren't legal, but they help local governments see on a map what they already knew because they've seen it, which is the floodplain is actually bigger than the legal regulatory map says it is. The other thing that Blueprint is doing is creating a river basin action strategy in these 6 basins that the legislature created the program in. And the first of those river basin action strategies will come out, we think, this month for the Neuse River, and then the others will follow. So that's resilience. Moving on to PFAS and forever chemicals, a number of updates in recent months. Probably the most recent one was the announcement from EPA and U.S. Department of Justice and Comores on a settlement. It includes North Carolina, but it did not involve North Carolina. No one at any of those entities talked to anyone in North Carolina. And it will do very little, if anything, for this state. What it is requiring for Comores in New Jersey and West Virginia is to pretty much do what else already happened here with Comores from the consent decree in 2019. So that doesn't do anything for us. And there's a total of $90 million for projects over 15 years. So if you do the math, 90 million divided by 15 is 6, divided by 3 states is 2 million a year. And there's no guarantee actually we get that. And we don't get to choose. We have no input in what those projects would be. Comores would choose those projects. So we're not excited about that settlement. Governor and I have gone to Wilmington twice in recent months. I think since I was last here, we visited the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority's water treatment plant, where they have spent $50 million to build this new plant to remove PFAS from the water supply. And I think they will be spending $5 to $6 million every year to operate it. So it was good to see that plant and how amazing it is, but also to understand how much more their ratepayers are probably going to have to pay. And then on the same day that the Comores settlement was announced, the governor and I went to a home outside of Wilmington where We had tested for PFAS, found it. It wasn't Chemours chemicals, it was other PFAS. And so we used our Bernard Allen Fund to purchase for them and under the sink filtration system. And now they have healthy drinking water coming out of it. We are out of money in Bernard Allen, or we were until the other day, but I'll come back to the budget. We've also been working very closely with the Collaboratory on their study of fire stations and surrounding neighborhoods on well water, because we are seeing, and they are seeing, really, really unacceptably high levels of PFAS. And so we want to continue working with them, and we'll continue working with the Collaboratory to help those fire stations and the surrounding neighborhoods so that they in fact have safe drinking water as well. There have been announcements from EPA on PFAS, and if you'll indulge me, I want to read from those so I don't get it wrong. On February 10th, they issued a fact sheet, and part of it was about health effects of PFAS. And so I'm now EPA. Current peer-reviewed scientific studies have shown that exposure to certain levels of PFAS may lead to reproductive effects, developmental effects, or delays in children, increased risk of some cancers, reduced ability of the body's immune system to fight infections, interference with the body's natural hormones, and increased cholesterol levels and/or risk of obesity. Because children are still developing, they may be more sensitive to the harmful effects of chemicals such as PFAS. That's EPA's assessment of the health risks. Then on May 18th, they did a number of things and put out a strategy on PFAS. So again, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to read 3 short excerpts from that. Again, this is EPA. Stopping PFAS contamination before it reaches drinking water sources is central to EPA's strategy. The agency is advancing technology-based effluent limitations and pretreatment standards for key industrial categories that discharge PFAS, including chemical manufacturers and other sources, to keep PFAS out of waterways in the first place. The agency is currently developing a proposed rule that will be issued for public comment in the coming months. It also said, the agency is also looking to hold polluters accountable for legacy contamination, consistent with the polluter pays principle, rather than the passive receivers that never place these chemicals in the environment, but have been left to manage them. And finally, by reducing PFAS at the point of discharge, EPA lowers the long-term treatment burden on water systems and their ratepayers and gets closer to the source of the problem. Source reduction also limits the volume of PFAS-laden residuals that water system must ultimately manage. So that's EPA a month and a half ago. So I know you all have a proposed rule in front of you, monitoring and minimization for PFAS and for 1,4-dioxane. And I know they're not on today's agenda, but they will be in the near future. I think we're still processing thousands of comments. But as you go about your deliberations on those rules and review the hearing officer's report, I encourage you to consider both those thousands of comments pushing for a numeric standard and EPA's documents as well that I've just read from, both of which recommend there be a standard and discharge limits at the source. That's my PFAS update. There's more going on, but you don't want me here forever. Permitting. We still every year process about 40,000 permits, which to me, whenever I think about it, that is kind of astounding. We continue with our permit transformation project to streamline our process, put it online, make it more interactive, easier for people to use. We're now almost at 60% of our permits are online and interactive, which is great. But another issue another challenge with our permitting is that our engineers who do a lot of this work have the highest vacancy rate in the department. So overall, our vacancies are at 9%, but engineers 13%. And it's hard to hire them because we don't pay nearly as much as the private sector, but trying to work on that. Which brings me to the budget, signed on Tuesday. And overall, it is very positive for this department. We have concerns, and I'll mention them. But we put out a news release yesterday, so if you want to see more details, it's there. So, yeah, let's go through the good stuff. That's more fun. I'll come back to the concerns. Again, overall, it's very positive for this department, and I really appreciate the legislature for doing that and the governor for signing the bill. On PFAS, $3 million for 5 positions and water sampling and testing, $45 million for PFAS water infrastructure projects, and $10.2 million for the Bernard Allen Fund to help test and to test private drinking water wells and provide alternative water sources when necessary. There's also $22 million to the collaboratory for research. Research is always good. We do have a concern, though, that there's a provision that does not require that data to be released to the public. In my view, if there's public dollars, the information, the data, the results should be made public as well, because the more transparency there is, the more people trust the results and trust the findings and trust the ideas and steps that come out of it. Hurricane Helene recovery in the budget, $20 million for dam safety projects in the mountains. We already have 10 million and have awarded, I think, 7.3 million of that. And 1 million to continue mapping historical landslides to protect roads and critical infrastructure. On the resilience front, $4.5 million more to the flood resiliency blueprint for projects, and funding as well, $850,000 to keep our current time-limited employees around for longer so we can continue to do the work. $250,000 to support 2 permanent staff in our Resilient Coastal Communities program. $200,000 to manage our coastal reserves, 10 beautiful places along the coast. $850,000 to Albemarle Pamlico National Estuary Partnership to match the federal dollars. $1.5 million for continued development of inundation maps for dams and creation of a web-based tool so the public can see those maps. Air quality, this was a big one. They were about to lose $2.3 million because we're not going to have automobile emissions inspections anymore, and they got fees from that. Instead, this is the best possible result, $2.3 million recurring for the air quality program, which also converts 15 or 16 FTEs to state appropriated positions rather than fee funded, which is really great. And then a couple agency operations things. $2.1 million for 9 new Marine Patrol officers and, associated expenses. And then on permits, $3.5 million to continue our permit transformation program and $3 million for the use of artificial intelligence in our permitting processes. So that'll be an interesting and I hope very helpful aspect as well. Our concerns. 1, the budget eliminates the Office of Environmental Education and the 2 employees who work there. This is an incredibly successful and helpful program. It's been around, I think, for 30 years, and it is no more. So we are trying to figure out what to do with that. They have, over the years, certified, I think, more than 1,600 educators as, certified environmental educators, and that knowledge has been spread to thousands and thousands of children, K through 12. And another concern is some funding was shifted such that our water infrastructure program, the SRFs, will be reduced by about $100 million per year. Some of the interest money is getting moved to the general fund instead of back into the program. So $100 million estimated less per year for water infrastructure. We don't think that's a good step, but it is the reality. So again, overall, a very strong budget for our department. We worked really hard on it. I want to salute our legislative director, Emma Hennon, who did an incredible job. And that is my report. Again, I'll just close by thanking all of you for the good, hard work you do for the people, and thank my colleagues in the room as well for the same. These are complicated, challenging issues, so I appreciate all the effort and work and time and expertise you bring to it. If you want me to answer questions, I can try. Up to you.
Thank you for coming today.
Sure.
And thank you for your collaboration because we've worked well together and I appreciate your collaboration. So questions here from
Yes.
Commissioner Gibson.
Yeah, It's wonderful to hear the continuing support for recovery from Hurricane Helene. I've just returned from a trip to Mitchell County where we had done some sampling of household tap water last summer.
Mhm.
And the good news at that point was every house that had a connection to a community water system or a public water system, their samples met all standards under the Safe Drinking Water Act. However, many homes relying on springs and private wells, we saw a lot of problems. And so this trip this week was to install water filters in several homes that get their water from spring systems where we saw some really basic public health concerns like extremely high levels of E. coli up to close to 100 per milliliter. Those are markers of potential fecal contamination. To pay for these filters, they're pretty expensive. They're whole house water filters. We got a small grant. It was only enough to cover a few houses. And I'm just wondering if there's anything in the hurricane relief funds to assist those kinds of houses that are relying on private water systems.
That is a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer. I haven't heard of that being an option. Richard? No?
But so. I don't think-
We don't think so, but we can double check and get back to you. How about that?
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Baumgartner.
Thanks for your update,
Sure.
Mr. Secretary. And this may be way preliminary, but the 4.5 million flood implementation, do you have a game plan for that now? Is it something you're thinking about? Is it going to get farmed out? Is it internal? What's the thoughts in the department?
Those funds, 4.5 million, the new money, are in addition to some existing funds, I think like 16 million from the original 96 million that we haven't done it all yet. And that was intentional because we want to select projects that come out of those 6 river basin action strategies. So the communities who get together and work through all that with us will create a list of priority projects. And so we will be choosing from among the top projects from those 6 strategies. Obviously, 20 million or so isn't going to fund a whole lot of them, but it's a start.
Additional questions? Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you very much. Have a good meeting.
Yes, thank you. Very good presentation. Thank you. All right. We'll proceed on to our action items now. 2630, item number 1, 2613, request to approve 2 reappointments to the Water Pollution Control System Operator Certification Commission. And that's Jeffrey Talbot. There he comes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Good morning.
And good morning, members. My name is Jeff Talbot, and I'm the supervisor of the North Carolina Operator Certification Program within the Division of Water Resources. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Water Pollution Control System Operator Certification Commission, the WPC-SOCC, to request your approval of 2 reappointments to that commission. DEQ Secretary Reed Wilson recently appointed the following members to serve on the commission: Mr. Arnold Allred in the town of Franklinville, and Mr. Matthew Haynes with Darling Ingredients. Biographic information about these appointees is contained in your packages, and it is requested that the appointments be approved as presented.
Questions for Mr. Talbot? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the appointments.
I was looking for you. Commissioner Gibson makes the motion to approve. Would you have a second on that?
Second.
Second, heard over here. Commissioner Jaspers, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you so much.
All right, item number 2 is request approval for EMC certification of the Buncombe County Air Quality Agency pursuant to GS 143-215-112. I believe that'll be Mike Eberzinskis. And I believe both counselor and executive director have been active in these discussions too, so we can rely on them for questions as well. So Mike, you have the main presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give just a 60-second introduction and overview on the topic and summary, actually, and then hand it off to Ashley Featherstone, the director of the Asheville Buncombe program, for a short presentation. But for those of you on the commission that are not on the Air Quality Committee or didn't listen to the Air Quality Committee last meeting, I'll just do a quick overview, and you might be asking, local air quality programs, we have those in North Carolina? Well, yes, we do. And so while DAQ handles most of the state, local governments are authorized to establish and administer their own air pollution control programs in North Carolina. And to do so, they must meet specific regulatory requirements and receive certification from the EMC. So there are 3 certified programs in North Carolina. There's Mecklenburg County, Forsyth County, and Buncombe County. And they function in North Carolina similar to our regional offices for local service distribution across the state. They are in step with our agency. They are fully engaged with our agency. A great example of that is their staff participates in our topical work groups that we hold across our division for our staff. Their staff participate in those to ensure consistency across the state. And we're very fortunate to have great leadership in the 3 local programs. The directors are career professional staff, and Taylor and I meet with those local directors monthly via video call and in person at least twice a year. Today, what's before you is a request for EMC certification of the Buncombe County Air Quality Program due to a reorganization and name change. The regulatory footprint will remain the same. The duties, responsibilities, and staff of the agency will not change. So as part of your agenda package, there was an agenda item description and summary, a draft EMC resolution for your consideration that would certify the Buncombe County local program, and an appendix containing supporting materials. Commission Counsel Ellie Young, Commission Executive Director John Evans, and I have all reviewed the material and determined that the Buncombe County Air Quality Agency meets all requirements. And I really want to thank Ellie and John for all of their efforts on this matter. We collectively recommend approval of the draft resolution that is attached here today. But first, we have Ashley Featherstone, the Asheville Buncombe Air Quality Agency Director, who has a short 8-slide presentation to officially present their request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Featherstone.
Thank
Good to
you.
have you on your trip. I guess you made it last night, probably. You didn't drive this morning, did you?
Yes, last night.
Good, good.
Yes. Thank you,
And I
Mr.
appreciate
Chair.
8 slides. That's great. We sometimes
Yes.
see 20 or 30.
It will
Appreciate
be
8
brief.
slides. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, for giving us this opportunity to come and present our request for certification of our reorganized program this morning. I'm here with Suzanne Avett from Buncombe County Legal Team, and just would also like to thank Director Abrazinskis, Executive Director Evans, and Counsel Young for all their guidance as we move through this process. So again, I'll go ahead and get started here. See, I just have 8 slides again. I've got some information, very brief, about the program history, overview, and the process that we've been going through. So we started out as a regional program. That's how we were formed. And originally, City of Asheville Smoke Abatement Program. It started back in the 1940s. And we were certified by the EMC in 1972, and then again in the year 2000 when our program was reformed after Haywood County withdrew. So it's been 26 years. We had to go back and look at what we did back then. Not a common process, of course. Just a brief overview here. We are currently governed by an independent board with appointees from the City of Asheville and Buncombe County, and we're part of an interlocal agreement. And as part of that agreement, we don't receive any we don't receive any additional funding from the local government. So by reorganizing, as we're proposing, we will be able to receive some funds from Buncombe County government. So our air quality code consists of 3 chapters. Chapter 1 is our administrative section of our code that talks about how we are governed and set up. Chapters 4 and 17 contain our air quality standards, permitting requirements. Those basically model the 2D and 2Q North Carolina Air Quality Code, are consistent there. And so what we have done as part of the process, making sure that our code is up to date, our current board has adopted updates on June 24th to make sure all of the rules are up to date with the latest state code updates. And currently, we're under public notice for our Chapter 1, which changes our organizational structure under Buncombe County. So these rules conform to state code. We're not proposing any other changes. Buncombe County government passed a resolution for this transition back June 16th that extended our interlocal while we seek certification from the EMC. It created an advisory council that will replace our current air quality governing board, direct staff to go to public notice again for the Buncombe County Air Quality Code, where the only changes will be to that Chapter 1. It also addresses Clean Air Act Section 128 requirements and states that the Buncombe County Air Quality will take over the duties of the current Asheville Buncombe Air Quality pending certification from the EMC. So our proposal, we're going to be part of the Buncombe County Permits and Inspections Department. We will have separate account and program structures. The program will officially reside inside that larger program that we currently work with on other issues. All existing staff, assets, and systems will transition over. We will be called Buncombe County Air Quality. We're also asking the DAQ to assume the air quality permitting and enforcement duties for all county-owned facilities, including the Buncombe County landfill, which is a Title V air quality permitted source. And last slide, timeline summary here today, requesting certification for our program. We are on the Board of Commissioners agenda for the July 21 meeting where they are expected to adopt the air quality code. And then our current interlocal will expire on July 24th, and that will be the official transition of the program. Any questions?
All right, questions for Ms. Featherstone or staff? Yes, Commissioner Reardon.
Yeah, let me see if this is relevant or not. It may or may not be. In the disaster response, such as we're having with the biochar that's going on now and getting rid of some of the down trees and all, what does the coordination between your group looks like and DEQ or air quality, I guess? How does that work? Was there any impediment here that your group would have on being able to mitigate some of that? Or is there coordination there? How does that work?
Yes, thanks for the question. We have had a lot of coordination with DAQ staff, even before the storm occurred, when it was predicted. They have been, just great support for us, having regular conversations about monitoring, about working with our facilities to get through issues with the storms. As you know, they provided a lot of guidance with air curtain incinerators and getting the no action assurance letters from EPA as we work through the process. So we work very closely with them, follow their lead, and they've helped us tremendously. So that answers your
Great.
question.
Thank you for that.
Other questions? I have one that's related, and I just mentioned it because I mentioned it to the executive director and the council yesterday. In the slides for Group 0 yesterday, Mike, your DAQ said if the local governments adopt these three entities, that they will save money. And my question back was, aren't they adopting our statutes and rules by reference anyway? The bullet yesterday made it read like it was an option for them to adopt something that the state passed. And this kind of takes me back to stormwater, where we see a lot of local governments have more lenient rules or more stricter rules than the state rules. That bullet really confused me. And I don't think it affects what we're doing today, but I did ask these folks to help me understand why they wouldn't just by reference promulgate what we promulgate.
Thank you for the question. I think the use of the term "if" yesterday was not an appropriate use of the term "if." I think it's the local programs adopt whatever this body adopts. And so it's not necessarily by reference, it's through their own actions to mirror what we've done. Is it by reference in some cases? Actually.
It's a little bit confusing, but we essentially, technically, I understand it's not exactly by reference. We take the exact same language and put it into our code. So I've referred to it as by reference, but I think it's the exact same language essentially. We just put it into our separate code.
Yeah, and I think it's important though, guys, that we need to look into that because it goes to Vice Chair Reardon's questions to you, Ms. Featherstone. You know, times of crisis, we don't want counties outside of Buncombe to feel like things are looser in Buncombe County or tighter in Buncombe County than they are everywhere else. That should be the same. And like stormwater, statewide rules should be the same too. So I just want to make sure that there's not a gap in the rules that we pass. And then it takes Buncombe County a year to pass it and they have a different standard while we've
Right.
got a rule clearly that should be automatically updated. So
Great point. Well taken. And just a reminder, what part of our oversight authority is to review those rules and then ultimately submit them to EPA on their behalf as well. So, but you're absolutely right. Yes, sir.
okay, thank
Add to that.
you. Vice Chair Reardon.
Yeah, go back on what you're saying is if they adopted what the department has and subsequent amendments, then they become active at the same time that the departments would. But in this case, they're promulgating their own as a mere copy of what the department has. So there would be this time lag.
There would be. I
There
think.
would be this time lag. And from a legal aspect, can the county adopt what's in the administrative code that the department works off of? Can they adopt that as their rule?
By
If-
reference,
Mhm.
they can.
If they did that with subsequent amendments, then there would not be, as the chairman talked about, a lag between when the state had it and the county hasn't. If you don't do it by reference with subsequent amendment, then there is expected to be a time lag.
In theory, I think that's true, but I think the federal standards are going to take anything that we have at the state or local level anyway. So if the federal standards change, they are enforceable at the state level and the local level, even before the code has been updated at our level or the local level.
Okay. And again, I don't want to get down a rabbit hole here. It doesn't affect this recertification, but I do think as we look at Group Zero, Mike and Ashley, we may be back to you making sure that we have, but we'll get for recommendations from council and staff on that.
Thank you. We do keep up with all the updates. And even if we haven't got something officially adopted, we follow any changes to the state code so that we're consistent. So we're very mindful of that.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Hearing none, do we have a motion? Commissioner Ellison makes a motion to approve. Yes, if you read the motion.
Yes, I move for approval by the Environmental Management Commission, the certification of Buncombe County Air Quality Agency pursuant to GS 143-215.112.
Okay. And the regulatory impact analysis too. Is there regulatory impact? No, there's no RA on this.
No.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion and a second? Have a second? Commissioner Tweedy makes the second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Oh,
Aye.
you're going to discuss your own motion?
Yeah. That's
Okay, let's not take the vote yet. Let me recall that. Yeah,
I
what's your
just-
discussion on your motion?
I just wanted to make the comment that I think a local entity like this can be a lot more responsive both to the citizens and regional specific conditions, particularly given the physiography of the Asheville area. I just think it's better to push this down to the local level. That's all.
Yeah, okay. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Motion passes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank y'all for making the trip. Thanks staff too for all the work you've done. These are unusual and I appreciate everything that everybody did to get this one through. Okay, item number 3, 2615, request approval to proceed to public notice and hearing for the periodic rule review reports 15A, NCAC 13A, hazardous waste management, 13B, except section 1500, solid waste management, and 13C, inactive hazardous waste or waste disposal. Jessica Monty. Welcome, Ms.
Good.
Monty.
Good morning, Chair Solomon, members of the commission. So this is the periodic review of existing rules that's required to be done every 10 years. This is putting the rules in the buckets of necessary, unnecessary in those reports. The first few slides are just going over the process for rule review. I know you've all seen these before, so I won't get into detail. But this is the request to put these reports out to public comment. So rules that are designated as necessary will be brought back for readoption, and those designated as unnecessary will be removed from the code. This grouping is, as mentioned, hazardous waste, non-hazardous solid waste, and inactive hazardous substance or waste disposal sites. Note subchapter 13B, this excludes section 1500 because that section of rules is under the authority of DEQ and not the EMC. The next few slides just give an overview of the existing rules. These are 13A, 13B, and 13C are adopted in accordance with Article 9 of General Statute 130A. 13A establishes requirements for hazardous waste management, including the incorporation of requirements for RCRA Subtitle C. Just general overview on these next few slides of each program, and we included links to the websites for more information. Subchapter 13B establishes requirements for non-hazardous solid waste, including or consistent with the requirements of RCRA Subtitle D, such as landfills compliance. Subchapter 13C is for procedures for notification and inactive hazardous substance or waste disposal site prioritization and requirements for voluntary cleanups conducted in the registered environmental consultant program. This is the inactive hazardous sites branch within the Superfund section in DWM. All rules in these three subchapters have been categorized as their initial determinations as necessary to be brought back for readoption, again, with that exception of section 1500 and 13B. Here's the proposed schedule for this rule review. Coming today to get approval to go to public comment, and hopefully we'll have the reports to the Rules Review Commission by the deadline of April 2027. So here is our request to go to public comment with these reports. Do I have any questions?
Questions for Ms. Monty? Mr. Smith?
What did 13B 1500 do wrong to be excluded?
I couldn't tell you. It was done in the 70s.
Oh,
So
that explains a lot.
but the statute says the department shall instead of the EMC shall. But it's their rules for tax relief for recycling facilities, not necessarily environmental protection. They're just to allow for local tax relief for recycling facilities and equipment.
I think I'm still on a list from my old middle school from the 70s. I never got off either.
So one follow-up question to that. So what is the status of that program? Are those rules still relevant, or are we saying
yes.
they're not needed? And if they are needed, would they not need to be readopted?
They're in a separate report, so they're not included in this report from the
I see.
RC. Then they're in their own report that goes to DEQ, and we will readopt them. And we send out tons of those tax certifications every year.
Right,
So
thank
yes.
you.
Okay. Commissioner Baumgartner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, really no issue or no concerns in committee. Prepared to make a motion if you're ready.
If you're ready, I'm ready.
All right, sounds good. Move that we proceed with public notice for and hearing for the periodic review, periodic rule review for 15A, 13, NCAC 13A, 13B, and 13C. That's it.
Okay, what's on the board? Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Wright makes a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, request to proceed to public notice and hearing with proposed amendments and regulatory impact analysis for 15A NC 02S rules and criteria for the administration of the dry cleaning solvent fund. Oh, Ms. Monty's back. Okay, very good.
Okay, so this is the end step. We've already done the rule review for these rules. Now we're set the deadline with the RRC. Now we're coming back for the readoption of these rules for the dry cleaning solvent cleanup fund. We have 16 rules in that subchapter. They're administered by the Dry Cleaning Solvent Cleanup Act program, the DISCA program in DEQ Superfund section. And the deadline for readoption for these rules set by the Rules Review Commission is August 1st, 2027. These rules are adopted in accordance with Article 21A of General Statute 143. There's again a link to the program for more information. The purpose of these rules is to establish the criteria for eligibility for certification into the program, minimum management practices, risk-based approach for assessment and remediation, and criteria for the disbursement of those funds. The regulatory impact analysis in attachment B was approved by OSBM, and the proposed amendments that are being done concurrently with the readoption are expected to have little to no impacts because we are making just minimum or non-substantive changes, which, as you see here, is included in attachment A, are mainly technical corrections, removing redundant or unnecessary language, making a change for capacity for spill containment from 110% to 100%, and then revising the language in 0506 to make it consistent with the similar language in 02L, 0202. Repealing 2 rules, and that is because they either haven't been used or been necessary since they were originally adopted, or they are redundant. They're similar to or have the same requirements as statute requirements. We do meet semi-annually with the stakeholder group for the DISCA program, so they have been made aware of these proposed changes. This is the readoption schedule, hopefully to have them back for adoption in May 2027, meeting that deadline of August 1st, 2027. And so this is the request to put these rules for readoption out to public notice.
Question for you, Ms. Monty, probably showing my age, but the spill containment going from 110 to 100. 110 used to be like a national standard we used in multiple states. Is there a reason why we've reduced it now? Is that a change that's happened in my long career that I've not noticed, or we just move it, can we move it to 100% outside of national standard?
I'm going to double check with our program staff in the room. Delonda Alexander.
Thank you for the question. With the stakeholders, that change came because they said they were the ones that put that in when they wrote the statute and went to the legislature for the program. They said that they just came up with that number. They didn't reference any kind of federal regulation. They just said, we kind of came up with that number. This is what the stakeholders told us. And the spill containment pans that are readily available to businesses can meet the 100% capacity. It's a cost burden to the businesses to try to find one to meet 110% capacity. So we did a lot of calculations on what was stored in those containment pans, and 100% clearly meets our requirements. Typically, the drums stored in those containment pans are at 25%, 50% capacity before they have them disposed of, the waste disposed of. So it more than meets the requirement that we need for the 100% capacity. So to help the businesses that were struggling, the dry cleaners are struggling continuously, and the stakeholders' recommendation, we went ahead and made that change.
Okay. And I might be confused with national SBCC standards, but I'm sure it'll come out during the comment period either way. So just a question. Okay. Any other questions of staff? Commissioner Smith?
So the proposed repeal of 0507, which is the remedial action plan rule, can you explain the basis for that repeal?
Oh, sure. This is kind of a twofold answer. I wrote these rules 23 years ago, 24 years ago.
Congratulations.
And I came from Texas where I wrote risk-based rules there. So this was kind of a carryover from what I knew, because we were the first risk-based program in DEQ. There was no precedent for how this program would run. So I just used my prior knowledge to write these rules. And I came from UST where a remedial action plan was necessary because we were putting in big treatment systems. We didn't know how this program would work at the time because no one had done it here. And so we wrote the rules, and over the years, as the program was implemented, we realized we never needed this. We never used it. At the end, we have a risk management plan that lays out everything that was done at the site. And under remediation, if we have to do any remediation, we do it in an interim remedial action plan and preliminary source removal, which is in the rules already. So we never, in the 20+ years I've been in this program, we have never used this rule to require a remedial action plan. And we don't even need a rule to do that if we ever wanted to. We request any kind of report we want from our contractors. We get 50 different kinds of reports that aren't in the rule. It's because we lay out our policy and our guidance that says you'll give us this when we require it. So we've never used the rule. And it's not in our statute that we're required to have a remedial action plan. In other programs like inactive hazardous sites and other programs, it's written in there that they have to have a remedial action plan to implement land use restrictions. The DSCA statute does not have that. It references the risk management plan, does not reference the remedial action plan.
Okay, good. Additional questions, staff? Okay, hearing none. Commissioner Baumgartner, this is in your committee, I believe, too.
Yes, committee had no concerns with this one, so I'll make a motion that we, the EMC move to proceed to public notice and hearing for the proposed amendments for regulatory impact analysis for 15A NCAC O2S rules and criteria for administration of dry clean solvent cleanup fund.
Very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Smith.
So I'm still a little troubled by that
Is that a
last
second? Is that a
conversation.
second?
No, I thought you said there was a second.
No, there's not a second. Do we have a second? Are you
never mind.
seconding? You're not seconding?
No, I'm not seconding.
Okay.
I thought I was discussing.
No, not yet. Do we have a second? Vice Chair Reardon makes the second. Any discussion on the motion? Now, Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. So I'm still a little troubled by the gap that's left by not having a link apparently between sections that talk about screening levels and target levels and some sort of plan to reach those levels. And maybe it's there somewhere in the background. And I don't want to extend this today. I'm saying this by way of saying I have questions, and maybe those questions will get answered in the process of sending it out to public notice and hearing. But it looks like there needs to be some sort of bridge between setting screening levels and target levels and a plan that is on record and available to the public as well as to the petitioner, the owner of the dry cleaning site. So I have some questions.
Okay.
I may
Not to cut
well-
you off, but whether to cut you off or not, but if we go for today or not, I'll ask Committee Chair Baumgartner and Director Evans to get up with the solvent staff,
Yeah.
the
I
staff
guess-
on this and to come up with, give us a 1 or 2 page explanation of
All
what
right.
Commissioner Smith is
We will do
concerned
it.
about.
Sure.
And we will catch that up or we'll get that back in comments.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. There is a risk, I'll just tell you real quick, there is a risk assessment plan that lays out everything that you are concerned about, reaching the limits. And then the risk management plan covers how we implement that and reach the levels and make land use restrictions.
And so it may be that my question is, where are those things reflected in the rules as a requirement and what the contents of those things are? So-
Let us do that for
All
you.
right,
We'll get
sure.
that. Very good. Okay, any other discussions on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous, motion carries. All right, thank you, Ms. Monty.
Thank
I
you.
think you're done with us, aren't you? All right. Item number 5, 2617, approval of dam safety proposed rule amendments. Demler staff will ask, we'll not really have it in a traditional way here, but they'll ask for our approval, I believe, today. And that is Mr. Smith. What happened that one? Guess he'll show the motion. Yeah.
Sure, sure. All right.
Welcome
So
back.
this is a scroll rather than a slideshow here, so that's okay. We've all gotten the opportunity, a lot of us, to look over some of these presentations in the past. I've learned a lot through my last few presentations to some of y'all, so I'm looking forward to presenting to you all that haven't had the opportunity to see what we're trying to do with dam safety, some of the rules that we've been working on over the last year. So thank you all for taking the time. And so to begin with, my name is Jacob Smith. I've been with the Dam Safety Program for about 5 years now. I have worked on these rules over the last year with my team members here, that the stakeholders all involved. This has been a very thorough process that we've tried to consider in every which way that we can. So by the end of this presentation, I'm hopeful that you guys see that what we're trying to do here is just modernize and clarify. I'll note that the dam safety law is really originally from 1967. So there are some things in there that are a little old, things that need to be updated, and that's really what we've tried to do in this process. So some rules included as examples. I've given you guys a smattering of different rules here. Really, we focused heavily on definitions and classification of dams because those were a large piece of what needed to be modernized. We've focused on some demonstrated dam safety professional engineering requirements, and then to a lesser extent, some engineering authority decision standards and minimum stream flows. And again, throughout this, I just want to try and convey our effort of modernizing and clarifying. So to see how we got here, so we began in earnest last year around February. So February through May into June 25, we were really heavy into the stakeholder engagement. I was a heavy piece of that. I'll talk till the lights turn off. And we had the opportunity to talk with the NCDOT, private engineers who have worked within North Carolina their whole life, more or less. We've gotten the opportunity to talk to City of Charlotte, Asheville, Lake Lure. They were all involved to this stakeholder agreement, or these stakeholder meetings, and anywhere from 10 to 20 people on any given morning, weekly throughout this period. We'd get our coffee and we'd all go through line by line, page by page. What are the rules that have been painstaking to you? What needs to be updated, and how can we try to meet that? And so that brings us to the, we went through the rule drafting phase along with our stakeholder coordination. We went through the fiscal note drafting and ultimately the approval. And now that brings us to today. From March to July, we are moving into that EMC approval to notice. So hopefully we can get there today. So the proposed amendments and overview, I'll just draw your attention to the red box here. We really, our broader goal, I've really said it a couple of times, but I want to hammer it home here. We are looking to modernize terminology and clarify definitions. We're not trying to create any undue burden for anyone who is a dam owner or a dam engineer in the state. We're just simply trying to bring the terminology and the processes away from 1967 and into the modern era, right? So for some examples, you're in a weird spot here. There we go. I'm OCD. So for some examples, wherever you see highlighted information, that's newly added information. If it's not highlighted or if it's just stricken, we've simply updated language to try and reflect what is actually out there these days. And so a big one, you can see there's a lot of highlighted information for number 17 here, dam breach inundation map. If you've, in North Carolina, a large part of what we do is built upon dam breach inundation maps. If you've heard of an emergency action plan, if it's ever been utilized or employed, that's built on a dam breach inundation map. And this is one of those common sense definitions to add here. We've been using breach inundation maps for years and years and years. However, if an owner were curious to what does the actual definition mean, we would never have had an opportunity to point them to this clear guiding language.
Let me ask you a
Please,
question.
please.
And I will make sure we're all on the same page. I know these were originally written in the 60s or 70s, but we did readopt these back in
Correct.
2018.
Correct.
So we had a bite of the apple to add this in, and we didn't add it in. Has something changed in the statutes, or did we just miss it 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago?
From what
what's
I've
going on?
gathered, there's been quite a bit of inference with respect to the EAP and the components therein that would initiate an inundation zone be utilized, but it was never in definition with respect to what it exactly was, right? We all know what it is. A lot of the engineers knew what it is, what we're requesting, but I'll toss to Toby.
Toby Benson, Director for the Division Manager of Mineral Land Resources. Thank you for the question, Chairman. Two things happened. During the original readoption, we only had 2 staff, and we went with just basically renewal of existing rules because we did not have time to meet the RRC's deadline for readoption. So that's why there's still a lot to update. And then the latest adoption of new rules was due to coal ash only. And those new coal ash rules are the only ones that were updated at the time, again, because we had limited staff. And as a department, we were having to respond to addressing federal rule into our state rules. And so at this point is the time where we're able to go back and look at the older rules, not including those coal ash rules that we did not cover the first time around.
But the RRC did review it and say it was approved for readoption last time.
Correct.
You just didn't make all the improvements you wanted to make? Is that what you're trying to say?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Question, Vice Chair Reardon, sure.
Yeah, does this apply to private ponds on people's property, or is this
If they
larger?
are jurisdictional to the state of North Carolina, there are a lot of dams that are under our inventory, but not jurisdictional, private owners, mom and pops who happen to have it. So if they're jurisdictional, yes, the dam breach inundation zone, this definition would apply to them. Should they need it. Not every jurisdictional dam is required to have a dam breach inundation zone. A low hazard jurisdictional dam, while very rare, does not require a dam breach inundation zone.
Mr. King, go ahead.
Yeah.
It's worth asking because we opened the question up that these were old and outdated, and they're not as old as we thought they were. So go ahead.
Well, you just mentioned something about dams and
Yes.
then backing up water and so forth. Did I miss something in this whole thing about dikes? Are dikes considered dams?
Dikes are
Yes.
by
Like in Hyde County?
Sure. No, it's a great point, a great question. There's some fuzzy language with respect to what constitutes a dam in the state of North Carolina. Largely speaking, if it has the ability to impound and has any height associated with the structure, it could fall under dam review.
Is that in here?
The updated to a dike versus a dam. We have not adjusted that because in large part, the review process is holistic in nature. And so it's very apparent when the engineering data suggests that there is a dike versus a dam. The effort that go into addressing the dam, like an emergency spillway, that's not something we necessarily have to consider with a dike in the same form or fashion. So we try to consider these things on a case-by-case basis. That's fortunately where we have dam safety, Toby Vinson and Jordan Pappas, our dam safety engineer. They can review these things case by case and apply the rules accordingly.
Again, Toby Benson, Director. Thanks for the question. That particular question, under the dam safety law, it defines dam as a dam that impounds or diverts water or water flow. So in that particular case, a dike would be considered under this authority, unless it's exempt due to other exemptions that we have as federal ownership, federal design, et cetera.
I can follow up, just quick.
Yes, follow up.
In reference to dikes
Yes.
in Hyde County, the flatland, farming, getting water to stay in order to farm the land and so forth. So does that fall under the federal jurisdiction if it's in a federal area, the property itself and wetlands, or does that impoundment pull back into a state?
In the case,
And in this particular rule?
in the case that you're speaking of, the ones that I know of that you're speaking about, they were designed, funded and built by either NRCS or another federal agency. And because as such, and under the state dam safety law, those would be exempt from state dam safety jurisdiction.
Vice Chair Root, the following.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is my own ignorance maybe. But farmers depend on water. And right now, there's very little water. And if we're gonna grow corn and we're gonna grow commodity, and we're gonna feed ourselves, we gotta have water. And that water has to be in something, and it ain't a bucket. So is this gonna adversely affect the ponds that these farmers are using to water their crops? I mean, are we placing another burden on the American farmer here beyond what they've had to deal with since 1967? I gotta know, or what we doing here, and if there's anybody here that's in opposition to this, I want to hear it. But help me understand how this is going to affect the average farmer in North Carolina, which uses small ponds to irrigate their commodities. Help me understand it.
The majority of ag ponds were exempted about 2010 when the legislature changed the size and impoundment capacity for dams in North Carolina. The size requirement used to be 15 feet tall and 10 acre feet volume of water.
10 acre, did you say?
I'm sorry?
You said 10 acres?
10 acre feet.
Uh-huh.
10 acre feet volume. At that time, they changed the requirement, 25 feet tall, 50 acre feet volume, unless it's high hazard. And so that exempted most of the agricultural farm ponds.
Yes.
And at the same time, the legislature changed part of the agricultural bill or agricultural laws that exempt hog lagoons from being considered high hazard for environmental concerns.
Okay.
So
that answers my question. Thank you.
One or two more, Commissioner Baumgartner, while we're on this.
I don't want to keep going down this rabbit trail until we get to comments, but and correct me if I'm wrong, Jacob, what may affect some existing farm ponds that did not meet the criteria for some of the dam safety regulations is if downstream, I know of one PL 566 dam that an interstate got built downstream, now it's high hazard. So to your point, these rules do affect or would affect something of that sort that downstream of that dam now brings that dam to high hazard. It wasn't built as a high hazard dam. It was exempt before, but now because there's something that happened downstream, it now goes in a high hazard category. And I think that's in the next slide.
Correct. Yeah, you're right on the money there in that a lot of these, as continued growth occurs across North Carolina, we see where there has been traditional farmland be taken up by townhome developments. And unfortunately, in those circumstances, if those townhome developments are directly impacted by the dam, then that would shift the hazard classification or could potentially shift the hazard classification into high, which would indicate a potential loss of life or something otherwise warrant of high hazard classification. Ideally, though, like you pointed out, we've got some additional slides and some additional information to try and give these owners an opportunity to not just be lumped into high hazard just as quickly as something is built downstream. Let's give these people an opportunity to look at the recipe to how they may avoid hazard classification. And that's a big piece of what we've been trying to do here. So that's a great question. I appreciate the discussion here. I've learned so much from the discussion we've all had. So continued examples, classification of dams. This is another one where we've tried to update, modernize a lot of what we look at, because unfortunately, what we've seen is many people getting lumped into hazard classifications that are higher than what they've traditionally been simply by nature of something downstream popping up, right? New additional data becomes available that shows a home is now going to be inundated by your structure where it wasn't there when the dam was initially created or put together. Really, what I want to draw your attention to here is the old, mainly focused on physical damage potential. Whereas the new language, what we've tried to add here, and again, I say what we've added is highlighted. A lot of what you see here is remained unchanged. But really what we've introduced are economic impact tiers, volume categories or traffic volume categories, greenways, trails, and parks to be considered in the hazard consideration. And requiring a standardized hazard classification and form submission to be sent to our program. So we get rid of the ambiguity from what one reviewer may interpret as high hazard or intermediate hazard from one reviewer to another reviewer. We've effectively tried to put some instructions so that everyone knows and everyone's playing off the same rules and we're all knowing what we need to identify as high, intermediate, or low. So, any questions there?
Vice Chair Reed.
One more.
Please.
We have a propensity to locate a subdivision anywhere there's flat land. And then all of a sudden, then everything around that has to comply with what they want. Is there opportunity here that these subdivisions are being located in such areas that it's going to adversely affect those farm ponds that are serving that farm community? That's a very important question to me.
I got that.
Please.
Again, thank you for the question. It's a good question. It's something that we've also had conversations with Department of Agriculture with, and specifically in regard to, the term hazard creep. So development downstream. Based on the law itself, nothing's addressing hazard creep and or responsibility by any developers downstream that would affect the ability for the upstream dam owner to be able to obtain resources to upgrade the classification for their dam. Nothing in this rules necessarily is actually going to cause any problem that wouldn't already be caused under the dam safety law. The question there is to look at possible amendments to the dam safety law, not the rules in the future, to address hazard creep the way the state of Virginia has. The state of Virginia has looked at hazard creep not only for agricultural purposes, but for any dam owner where any development that occurs downstream has caused a hazard reclassification of the dam upstream of it. And part of that requirement that the state of Virginia has done is required both the developer to share the costs with the owner to upgrade the dam to meet their state's safety standards. We don't have that in North Carolina under the dam safety law.
We need that probably eventually. We can't do it in rule. We can't do it in rule.
Can't do this in rule?
I don't think so.
I am.
So we can do what he's proposing in rule. What I'm saying is you can't do the hazard creep.
What I don't want is something in here that would facilitate the change of classification for that landowner farmer because some subdivision decided that they wanted to locate adjacent to it. So
there's nothing in here that would actually do that. Most of that's already in the state dam safety law.
Okay.
Part of what we got here actually helps mitigate some of those instances. And Jacob will get to that in the following presentation.
And that's a great point because we don't want to create any undue burden to anyone that is just trying to get by. These farm pond dams have largely been a part of the area before the dam safety law was even put together, right? So unfortunately, some people just get lumped in, but if we can avoid them being misclassified and unneedingly lumped into something that they don't need to be, like a high hazard potential, by way of adding some language that clarifies what does it actually mean to fall into this classification, that gives us an opportunity to find an avenue to help the common person,
I like
right?
the way you think.
That's what we want to do. We want to help.
And I got you on questions from here out. I had already waved him off and you waited between for questions. So
I
go ahead,
appreciate
finish
it.
up. and then we'll
Yes,
have
sir.
one
Yes,
more
sir.
question.
I'll move on through. So, professional engineering requirements. I know this is one we've had a lot of discussion on in the past over some of these meetings. And so, really what I want to draw your attention to is this effort where you see highlighted, that's where we've added. Where you see not highlighted, it has remained unchanged. And so for the most part, we have remained unchanged in how professional engineering requirements are defined by law or by rule in our statutes or our rules. What we've gone in and added, though, is for the purposes of a specific general statute, 143-215.25A, subsection A, subsection 8. It would have allowed for broad exemptions for anyone who had a professional engineering license in the state of North Carolina. They could have decided they wanted to put up a dam, and based off of the way that this statute had been written, if they presumed that the classification would be less than high, aka exempt, then they would have no obligation to the state for our review, input, or review, rather. So what we tried to do is close this loophole by indicating what it exactly means to have experience in dam design. We're not redefining professional engineering requirements, but with respect to this specific general statute, these are some of the items that we would expect to see from someone who wants to claim that the dam that I'm putting up does not fall under our classification, right? We want to see that you've demonstrated that ability. Thank you very much. Oh, wait, is that it? Perfect. So dam safety orders, nothing changing very significantly here. We're updating some language from the opinion of the director to the discretion of the director. Again, just trying to create a more defensible legal basis during an emergency situation. And that's similar to what we've done throughout in the smaller parts of this rule or of these language changes. Again, just some housekeeping examples here, referencing the former DEM to the current Division of Water Resources, right? These are the types of things that we just have had to address so that we're consistent. So that's a large part of what we've done here. We'll bring it to the regulatory impact analysis, the overview. This is what we've recently gotten approved through. And so what I'd like to say is really, why do these changes matter? There are some impacts to be expected to the local, state, and state and local government regulated dam owners. However, we're not expecting any federal impacts because federally owned dams are exempt from North Carolina state law. The major drivers are the hazard classifications and the definitions, right? While they can drive people upwards, ideally they drive people downwards by way of giving them a recipe, so to speak, to make the argument themselves. So we're all playing from the same playing field. They align rule text with longstanding practices. That's a big part of this. Is many of these rules, when we were going through our meetings with our stakeholders, a lot of our rules that we've proposed here have been in policy for years and years and years and years. And so this has just been an opportunity to codify some of these policy components and give us something more to anchor in when we are challenged with determination or a classification or an EAP request, right? That's the key here is we want to make sure we're keeping things safe, but also not creating any undue burden that shouldn't be there. Let's keep what needs to be safe. Again, some additional regulatory impact analysis information. The language here, while it can increase some cost for some impacted owners, it can largely drive down the cost for many impacted owners. We have a situation, a real world example that has come up recently in our program where a spillway has been proposed to be designed for an approximate $3 million, and they've done a site-specific study or are considering a site-specific study to identify where's the dam. Where's the influence of the dam stop downstream? Let's not over-design this spillway for a theoretical storm. Let's design this spillway to meaningfully impact and create a resiliency downstream without creating a cost burden to everyone involved, right? So in this example that we've got in real world right now, we're looking at the potential of dropping the $3 million price to half of that price, so 1.5 or less, because of dropping the unneeded spillway design. So there's potential for significant cost savings here. Finally, we're almost done. 2 slides left. The cost savings, we've gone over this. In effect, what I've just gone through is there's potential for some cost savings here significantly in that we aren't going and over designing. That is the key here, is that a lot of these rules that we've proposed and tried to issue here are in an effort to modernize the approach, add clarity, and let's stop lumping people into high hazard just because we want to fall into extra safe measures, right? Let's address what the actual hazard is for each individual dam owner. Let's meaningfully identify and quantify, is that dam adding 10 feet of water or is it adding 2 inches of water? Because that's really where we need to design around, right? That's the key. So there's an opportunity for cost savings. I've been given a piece of paper to read this as opposed. We've mistyped this ever so slight. And so we'll open it to questions, but Daimler requests approval to proceed to public notice and hearing with proposed revisions and readoptions of the dam safety rules for O2K and the regulatory impact analysis for 15A NCAC O2K rules for dam safety. So thank you very much. Sorry for running through the end of that one.
We'll get this more in our format when we come to it, but thank you for giving us this.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask because I get confused whether it's wetlands or streams or whatever, but Farm Bureau's in the room, and if Mitch or Keith, can one of y'all give us some insights? Is this consistent, some of the stuff that the vice chairs asked about the farm? Do y'all have any issues with it? We weren't part of the stakeholder group process, but I know y'all were, or I hope you were. And if you were, do you have any problems with any of this or issues here?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Keith Larrick. I'm Natural Resources Director at North Carolina Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau was part of the stakeholder process. And I believe Department of Agriculture was too. Their technical services section was part of that group as well. I think most of what we'd heard is, a lot of the ag ponds are exempt and not many of them are going to be high hazard. We are concerned with what did you call it? The hazard creep. I hadn't heard that term before, but it's an apt description. The way law is set up now, there's not much to be done about that, unfortunately. So, I mean, we do have concerns about that, and we have heard from some farmers who have fallen into this high hazard designation due to hazard creep. What we're trying to look at is, possible funding mechanisms to help those farmers out. That's sort of where we've kind of put our energy at for now. So, I mean,
Okay. So no problems with this going out to public or anything you see hurdle wise right now?
No, I think maybe public comment would be a good place to kind of raise, get some of these concerns on the record and things like that. So, I mean, I think that's where we kind of fell at the end of the stakeholder process.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ellison, any questions of staff on this one?
Just a couple of quick ones. I believe your cost estimate for a breach analysis was 5,000 to 15,000.
Approximately, yes.
Does that include survey?
It doesn't, in some circumstances, it does. For the smaller dams, that could include surveying, but for the larger structures, the 200 plus crest length, it would have to be accounted differently. Yeah.
So that range is primarily for the engineering analysis?
Correct.
That would require.
Yes, and that may constitute additional surveying upon occasion. Yes, sir.
Okay, the other thing, and maybe you can go back to the slide, I just wasn't quite understanding your qualifications for the engineer.
Yeah, we'll go back.
It looked like you had to have 5 projects that were all approved before you would be considered qualified. So how do you get to do 5 projects if you're not qualified?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. This has come up a couple of times. So in large part, we're not preventing anyone from submitting to dam safety. This is only if an engineer sees the rule and says, I want to apply for GS 143-215 subsection A, subsection 8. If you want to go through the process as normal, you have every opportunity to. That is to say that you can build your catalog in the traditional sense that we've reviewed things, submit an application for review, for your hazard determination, for your EAP. We're not changing that process for engineers to go.
Thank you.
So they can build that catalog. But yes, that's a good point. We don't want to keep anyone from opportunity or getting experience.
This will remain a slippery slope. 2 Ps on this commission probably, we have concerns probably, but because when you go do surgery, when you have knee surgery, there's not a requirement that the surgeon tells you he does knee surgery or no surgery, right? That the professional has the requirement for his own negligence. So this is trying to limit that professional definition, whether it's a surgeon, an engineer, a surveyor, or whatever medical professional who has the professional liability, if you will, to not do things. And I know you know that, but this is what it is, and they've checked with NC Bell, so I think we go to public with this and see if we come back with something.
I was just concerned that it was restraint of trade.
It could be. Mr. Bumgarner, questions?
I appreciate the discussion on high hazard because it is something that I have seen that does impact landowners pretty significantly. Farm ponds there for 40 years, something gets built downstream and all of a sudden they're in high hazard classification. High hazard classification comes with reporting and other things, upgrade of dams and requirements on that landowner that they never had signed up for to begin with, but now somebody did something downstream, has to come back. I appreciate the conversation about this, that is more statutory fixed and rule, but scope, that creep is real.
Ideally, the rules as we proposed really help us identify the level of creep. Is the creep largely due to the building and its positioning, or is it due to the dam and its confluence to the situation downstream, right? So that's hopefully what we can identify. Stop lumping people into high hazard, right? Let's get them out. Let's give them anything but if we can.
Yeah.
That's the key.
And this is the analogy here could be to the flood mapping too, right? That's why it's a lot of it's advisory, not regulatory, because people are paying taxes assuming they can develop property, and you show up with a map and say, you've been paying taxes on this for 20 years like it's residential 8, and now it's worth nothing. You know, you've by not doing the stormwater right or the flood creeping in on you, you've just ruined a person's the amount of taxes he's been paying or the amount of development he can do. The same kind of is happening here with the dams. You have that creep come in, and the innocent landowner or farmers paying a bigger bill or suffering because of something he had no control over the last 30 years.
They have
So
no
it's
control over
very
it.
similar.
A lot of them are absentee landowners as well. So,
Right.
you know, this subdivision or interstate or whatever gets built downstream or down of the stream of the dam, then the applications go backward, and now that landowner is subject to all these other requirements. And this actually, I mean, it does help, I got it, but it doesn't fix it, because there's some things that it's just gonna be a high hazard dam according to these classifications.
Correct.
But
Well, in large part, to that point, we're hopeful that ideally, you're right, this is a rule, this is a statute change that we're trying our best to wrangle in with what tools we've been given, with these rules and this opportunity to clarify and modernize. But there is only so much we can do, and we continue to work with owners and engineers. We're not a program that wants to use the rules as an opportunity to stop progress. We want to move it forward as best we can, but safely. That's the key. We don't want anyone to inadvertently be impacted by unsafe design.
I think this gives us a lot to think about, but I think germane to this issue in the whole, we've got to get this probably out to public comment at this point, because we can't fix it short of some statutory stuff. So, Mr. Tweedy, I think this was before your committee. So do you have any comments from the committee or any comments yourself as chair on this?
Yeah, just one real quick, I think minor correction, Mr. Smith. On the schedule, it says it was approved by committee, I believe, in March. That's not actually correct. I think it came to us in March, and then we delayed it till May.
Correct.
To get it
Right.
approved.
We
So
will
maybe
adjust.
correct that in the record.
Yep.
It's minor.
Nope, that's
Um,
correct.
The
Thank you.
reason that did not pass in March, there were a couple concerns. One was on the engineering requirements, and we went and confirmed that with the engineering board, that they had been involved in the stakeholder process, and Demler staff had worked with them. And then there was another concern or question about environmental, how environmental fit into the classification schedule. And I think we've addressed that. For now, we may revisit that in the future. So those things were addressed between March and May, then it passed out of committee in May and we're here today. If we're, there's more discussion.
Question for committee or?
Question for Commissioner Tweedy. When you said the environmental concerns, is that potential for contaminated sediment to go downstream in the event of a breach?
Yeah, potential environmental impacts, which can be broader than that. So
Right.
damage to natural systems.
Mr. Smith, I think that was your main concern out of committee, so you may want to
Yeah,
explain what you did.
that basically is the issue, that if you look at these rules and the changes that are proposed, you know, the staff went through and added definitions of minor, moderate, and major economic impact. There isn't anything similar to that would connect environmental impacts of a specific dam to the dam safety classifications. So what's minor environmental impact, moderate, major? So the discussion was along those lines, is do we need more specificity in terms of how environmental conditions fit into the classification scheme, in the same way that it's been done in this rule for economic impacts. And I think we basically agree that that's a longer discussion that needs to go on a different track, but I do hope it's something we pursue on a different track, because I think clarity would be helpful.
Yes. Okay.
Just final comment, I'd like to commend the staff. I think y'all did a good job on this rule, and you're very responsive in the questions that we did have out of committee. So thank you for that.
Okay. Mr. Tweedy, you ready for a motion?
If Mr. Smith will hand me what he read.
You may have to, you need to put the RA in there, and you may need to look at the previous agenda item to get the wording right.
I'm sorry, say that
His
again.
wording is not in the form we would make the motion in. The previous agenda item would be, but you'd have to substitute 2K in there for that.
Can I give it a try?
Yes.
I move that the commission approve to proceed to public notice and hearing with the proposed revisions and readoption of the dam safety rules for O2K and regulatory impact analysis for 15A NCAC O2K rules for dam safety.
Folks, you're getting very experienced over there now. You really are. You've been on the EMC for a little bit of what time? That's good on the
Right.
fly. That's good.
Close
Got a
enough?
motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Ormza Valletta.
Oh, 10 months, 10
No, I
months,
started
and
out-
you finally
no.
got it.
I started that way in the beginning and I have resulted to Dr. J for the speed I go at, but I'm back.
I'll bring my gold star next time.
Thank you.
You get one.
Right there in my head or
Yeah.
something, or my ear, wherever you want to put it. All right, we have a motion to second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Motion passes.
Good job, Jacob.
Very
Thank
good,
you, guys.
guys. Let's take about a 10-minute break and we'll return on my clock. 10:34, we'll come back at 10:45. Okay, here we go. It is 10:48 and I'm calling the EMC, JD Solomon calling the EMC back to order. We're not ready for this one yet. I didn't notice this on the agenda, but our remarks here are status part of the agenda is supposed to be our executive director. And my apologies, so I want the executive director remarks now as part of the system. And as Director Evans comes up, I'll say this, and I've had some questions. And this is to save the division directors and Executive Director Evans a little bit of space here. The budget was passed last week. It was signed by Governor Stein on Tuesday. The House will come back in for technical corrections on July 27th, at which times they could tweak this even more. So it's not uncommon for us collectively to not know exactly what the budget means to all of us for several months as we digest it. And we have in the past, again, not a criticism, it's just the way it works. There may be parts hidden in other places that we find 4 or 5 months later. That, oh, we've got to do this by some budget standard we didn't even see, or some law that passed. So save the questions on what the budget means to anything he talks about or those division directors. They do a great job, probably in September, explaining exactly what they see us needing to help them do and what they have to do in response to this previous session. And again, any technical corrections will be done by the time we meet next time in September. So with that, Director Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm going to go through the 5 charges that Chair Solomon had given me when I took this position. I'll go through them briefly. The first charge was to support Secretary Wilson's efforts that he talked about this morning. The first one is the hurricane relief. We're going to see a presentation by Deputy Secretary Masmore. She and I talked a bit about putting this together, and then obviously any comments that you have, questions you have resulting from that, I'm happy to follow up on. Emerging contaminants, as Secretary Wilson says, we continue to track that. There are a number of things happening at the federal level. Of course, we've got our state proposed rule that's making its way through. And then as Chair Solomon has said, with the budget contains several items with respect to emerging contaminants. We're looking at that and we're going to summarize those.
I mentioned one thing as you keep your momentum thought process. EPA did release some stuff recently on biosolids, like in the last couple of days. And there's a document with a comment period on it. So if the MC members will take a look at that, I don't have that link for you today, but I know this is fresh if you guys have not seen EPA's new position on biosolids and what they're PFAS and biosolids with what they're intending to do.
If it's okay, I can send that out, Mr. Chair.
If you have that, yes.
I do, sir. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
The second item was a gap identification, and another related one is filling those gaps. And I'm still working on that. It's a work in progress. However, I will say I would put the steering committee heard readoption for the O2A, which is the organization of the EMC rules, and the O2I, which deals with petitions for rulemaking, petitions for declaratory ruling. We've made some proposed changes to those. And those, I believe, would fit in the category of at least somewhat of a gap filling and delegation. So we've taken some initial steps on that. With respect to hiring, Chair Solomon is authorized to hire staff. We had posted a position, an engineering position. We have the applications in. We haven't had the opportunity to go through that. And I'll work at the chair's direction on that. The last thing, he wants me to look at process improvement. What I have provided for you, both in hard copy and then actually just very recently, this morning you'll see in the agenda 2 links to 2 proposed draft processes. The first one I'm not going to cover with you right now, and that is the remissions process. And that was just, remissions seem to come in waves. At the last remissions committee, we felt, Vice Chair Reardon felt it could help to develop a process. So I've developed that. That's available for you to look at. And I would appreciate any comments back on that. And it really is just a guide to help you all understand when you get on a remissions committee case. But the other process change that I wanted to just touch on very briefly is the development of what I call rule development sequence. And what you have in your hands is a hard copy. You've got an electronic copy. And what I really want to do is let you all, I'm going to explain this by, if you'll flip to the first attachment, which is let me scroll down. Wait. Where's my IT guy? Wait, maybe I got to get this thing. Can you make that scroll down to this page? Oh, just use the scroll. Yeah, you'll see it. One more. There we go. All right, there's perfect. I'll see what I can do about managing that. And what you've got is a couple page document. A thing that I heard that Chair Solomon heard and directed me to try to address from the last meeting was this idea of how do we get a rule from concept info through the committee. And try to standardize or at least give some uniform cadence to that procedure. Obviously, the chairs will retain all the authority to proceed the way they would like to do it, but at the same time, I think it would be helpful to have a sort of a default rulemaking cadence, and that's what I've tried to do here. I've shared this with a few of you on the phone if I spoke to you and I had it up working on it. I shared it with you. I've talked conceptually with Deputy Secretary Masmore. And so I'm just going to walk through this again with the idea, just give your flavor, go back. I really want the comments back. We can improve this. Every time I show somebody, they suggest an improvement. But I'm going to walk through this. There are what I would say are two new things or two improvements, I hope. And the first step is that informational presentation to the committee. We always get that. I hope we can make even better use of that because I think that's the stage where we can, the committee can tell the DEQ what they want in it. The DEQ will obviously come and tell them what they're going to have in it. But it may be an important step to telling the DEQ what the committee would like to see in a rule. If it is a purely administrative rule, it may not need stakeholder, but as a general rule, DEQ likes the stakeholder process. They use it before they bring you a rule. I think it's a good idea. So after that informational presentation and maybe some direction from the committee, the DEQ would develop the first draft, take it through a stakeholder process to try to identify the big issues, any places where there's agreement or disagreement on major issues. That's going to help inform the committee. At that point, the committee would get a draft rule, a draft IRA, and I say draft, and you'll see why in a minute, and then a comprehensive rule change template. And that comprehensive rule change template is new, but it's the thing that I used yesterday in the steering committee in the O2A and the O2I, and also in the stormwater. It lays out on each individual row of a spreadsheet or table the change, the justification, and the impact. Makes it easier, I hope, for you guys to evaluate the change on their own merits. If you vote in committee not to accept it, that's step 5B. It goes back to whatever step you want it to go back to. If you vote to approve it, to move it to full EMC, the DEQ would immediately submit the draft IRA to OSBM. OSBM would have 45 days approximately to finalize that, and it would come back and you would take action at the EMC at the next meeting. Again, you can read it. I've got a narrative and an explanation. I'm happy to I think you need to digest it, look at it, and provide me comments. I think we can improve this process. I think there's some opportunities, and I hope this helps.
Thank you. Any questions for John? Yeah, if you wanted to ask some questions.
John, does this resolve the RIA issue? You know, we heard, do we get it? Do we not? Does it go for approval before? Does this resolve that issue that was around this table one time?
Yes, Vice Chair. I believe it does. What I've got in the default process, again, with the respect to the committee chairs being able to run their committees the way they want, this default process would have a draft IRA
To the committee.
along with the draft rule, because it's your.
That's right.
It's your RIA, it's your statements, it's your rule. And once you like that, then it goes over to OSBM and OSBM approves it. Now, there could be some changes and there's a provision there to address that as well. But yes, I hope that keeps everything on the same cadence. Yes, sir.
After the committee sees it, then the RA goes over to review. Then once it's approved, it comes back and goes for the full commission.
That's correct. And there's a step in there that addresses that. But I hope that helps. It's going to, again, creates a better communication back and forth with us and DEQ. And
Thank you.
It'll serve us well, I think.
Thank you as well.
Mr. Ellis.
I'd like to make sure that the committees see comments from OSBM on the RIA, because we've had a few in the past year or so where there were substantive comments from OSBM that the department addressed, but we didn't see them until, and
Yes, sir. You'll see that.
That's in here.
Yes, sir, Mr. Commissioner. You'll see that step 7A and 7B. Yeah.
Commissioner Orm Zavaleta.
So first off, thank you, because I think this is something that we've raised previously, and I think this will be helpful. I guess what I'm a little unclear on was the comment that this would be a default and committee chairs still have the prerogative to do what they want. And if they do that, then that seems to work against the idea of having a standardized process. So help me understand where would there be differences? Where would a committee chair want to do something different from this? Do we have examples?
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm not sure I have examples. I think this would be the default procedure for the majority of rules. Where there are very complex rules, where there are very complex rules or RIAs, stakeholder involvement or lack of stakeholder involvement, permanent pending deadlines, all of those are multiple factors that would go into affecting whether you would follow this standard cadence. So there will be situations. I mean, the 2K dam safety rules is, in my opinion, a perfect example. I think there were some things we would have liked to have got done based on what I'm hearing from the commissioners, but at the same time, we had a pending deadline, so we moved forward on that. So, I think there's some flexibility, but let's get a process and then we can decide how to implement.
Let me give you two things real quick at a high level. There's a big difference between a procedure and a guideline or a process, right? Processes can be formal or informal, explicit or implicit. We do processes all day long. When you put it into a procedure, that's more of a legalistic term of you will do each step over and over. These are processes, these are guidelines, if you will. In fact, some states, when you do this with, like I do stuff like operations stuff, it becomes operations guidelines, not obligations procedures, because people in the field have to make decisions that become, they don't follow the exact procedure every time. If they don't follow the procedure every time, they can't get sued because they had to do something to mitigate health or safety. So these are processes or guidelines. I saw that. These are processes or guidelines. They're not going to be procedures. The reason they can't be procedures is we still want flexibility. There are times when the department is rushed or in a hurry or overloaded, and they're not going to be able to meet a long deadline or schedule or short one. And we have to be able to work with them. And that means knowing what's a big issue and what's a small issue. I think the problem that we've gotten into, and collectively with the department, is there's this assumption that things can come to the committee in one meeting, be approved, and rush that to the EMC and be approved. That has never been the way the EMC's done business. And I think you've seen some of these where even OSBM has given comments back to the department on some of these big complex ones, and it's taken several iterations with OSBM. So somehow here we have to come up with a reasonable schedule without making it such a burden that we need to be at another year to rulemaking. And so that means we've got to use some judgments, which sits with the chairs to determine what seems to be more of a major issue, a major rule change, and a minor. Now, I'll argue that we know that. People that have been on this commission for a few years have a sense of that. And we always play dumb when we don't make it go as fast or we want to go slower about what's the major and minor. We cannot assume that it just goes through committee, every rule package in one circle or even two. Some have been there for 6 or 7 times. And that is your decision as commissioners of how long you want to beat it around in committee or in front of the whole EMC. So we're trying to put a process in place I would argue we don't even need this process for civil remissions, except we didn't do civil remissions for about a year. And so when I look back on it, I go, well, most of these people on this commission have never done civil remissions before. We used to do them every meeting, guys. There was no doubt what we were doing. It just rolled every meeting. It was just automatic. Including somebody mentioned to me, we don't even have a quorum. I said, oh, we would grab another commissioner and put them on that committee for that. It's allowed under civil remissions. So there are things we can do to be flexible. We don't want to beat all the flexibility out of this thing because we do have to adjust to context and scale. So I'll end with that. His charge is to look at processes and guidelines more than hardcore procedures.
Right, and I've already got my first edit. I see the word
I see your
procedure,
edit. I saw
and
it.
I saw
So
that,
did
and
Vice Chair
I
Reardon.
apologize. Yeah.
So
Yes, sir.
that's probably clear as mud, but let's keep working through the process.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Commissioner Smith.
It looks like a reasonable set of recommendations. The one thing I think we could use some additional stress on is what the role of the committee is and how committees act on rulemaking. Yesterday, we had 2 items in the Water Quality Committee that were both completed without any committee action, no motion, no discussion, no vote. That is not the way committees are supposed to operate on rulemaking. And we need to get some clarity on that. So yes, commission chairs, committee chairs have discretion. They do not have discretion to act on behalf of the committee when the committee has a decision to make. And that effectively happened twice yesterday, which is unfortunate. So I think we need some, I don't know if it's re-education on that, but we need to stress that rulemaking, when it's before the committee, is a committee action, which means a vote by the committee.
We will do something like that because I'll take you back to Roberts a little bit more about the processes in front of the committee are a lot less by Roberts, by the rules of order, a lot more informal than they have to be in front of this formal commission for the formal vote of the body. Committees are supposed to be working committees. They do not necessarily have to have official votes at the end of the committee actions. They can and they can't. And in our case, we've always done that, so we'll keep doing that. But I will work with the individual committee chairs as well to make sure that they reiterate, know the expectations, because we need to make sure staff knows the expectations and fellow commissioners do too. So, yeah, there were we continue to work at it. I'll just say that, and I'm gonna leave that in public forum that way, and I will get some more information back on committees for this body, and again, I'll continue to work with committee chairs, but I do want the committee chairs to run their committees with their discretion and to the context they need to run it for their particular issue. So thank you for that comment. Additional comments, Vice Chair Reardon?
No, I want to thank him for what he did here. I want to thank him for what he did with the remissions aspects and the processes, guidelines, use that word. I think this is a great step forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Okay. Here now with our first information item then moves to Coastal Habitat Protection Plan update. For history, this is legislatively something we do, I believe it's legislative and not by rule, but I believe it's legislative between 3 different committees commissions within DEQ's umbrella. So present on, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Charlie Deaton. I'm the Habitat Protection Supervisor with the Division of Marine Fisheries. And like the Chair said, the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan goes to Environmental Management, Coastal Resources, and Marine Fisheries Commissions. So today I'm just here with a preview of the 2026 amendment to the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan. So just a note to start off with, since the last CHIP in 2021, we have all new staff on the division's end and a few new commissioners on our CHIP steering committee. That steering committee consists of 2 commissioners, each from Environmental Management, Coastal Resources, and Marine Fisheries Commissions. Your commission's representatives are Commissioners Bailey and Tweedy. The Coastal Resources Commissioners are the same. We have 2 new commissioners from the Marine Fisheries Commission. So a lot of fresh perspectives going into this edition of the CHIP.
And just to clarify, Jimmy Johnson's retired.
Jimmy Johnson is retired and his position was eliminated after his retirement.
And Ann,
Ann Deaton, no relation, moved on to NOAA, and I am now the new Ann.
that was my next question. I know that's a common name down where y'all are from, probably down east, but just make sure not, we hope maybe you are.
Nope, not
Related to Ann.
not
You're
as
not
everyone
related to Ann.
joked, my mom.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir.
So Coastal Habitat Protection Plan is mandated by the Fisheries Reform Act of 1997. We update it every 5 years. It's voted on by the 3 commissions, and staff from Division of Marine Fisheries, Coastal Management, and Water Resources all contribute, though we've expanded to include most of DEQ's divisions to bring in their perspectives. The 2016 CHIP is what we call the base plan. That was the last full rewrite of the CHIP. In 2021, we produced an amendment to the CHIP where we drafted a few new issue papers to tack on to the existing CHIP. We're doing that again this time around. Possibly next round in 5 more years, we might go for a full rewrite, collect all the pieces and smush them together. So we're currently in the middle of 2026 CHIP development, actually a little bit past the middle point at this point. So last year, we held scoping meetings with all of DEQ's divisions to get their feedback on what they wanted to see in this edition of the CHIP. We compiled all that into a framework, presented that to the interagency CHIP team and the CHIP steering committee, and got a thumbs up, go ahead with drafting a few issue papers to advance in this form of the CHIP. So we have those first drafts of those issue papers put together. The staff CHIP team is reviewing those right now, and we will be presenting them to the steering committee here in just a few weeks. So knowing that some of the commissioners are new, just wanted to highlight a few past accomplishments. Going quickly, previous CHIPs have been involved in obtaining a general permit for living shorelines. These are erosion protection structures that are considered to be nature-based solutions, more environmentally friendly than a bulkhead or seawall. Previously, they were kind of new ideas and had to go through the lengthier major permit process. So this focused, once we had a few pilot cases that had come through, focused on making a general permit to make this easier for your average homeowner to put in a more environmentally friendly shoreline. Also had a role in facilitating the coastal stormwater rules, developed some oyster restoration strategies that the Division of Marine Fisheries still implements today, improved our coastal habitat mapping efforts, developed strategic habitat areas, which you'll hear more about here in a couple minutes, and produced new research in a variety of areas, such as tidal creek sedimentation and other issues that have been brought to us by folks who are working on the water every day. So in the last edition of the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan, we had 5 issue papers plus a cross-cutting chapter on climate change impacts. The chapter that this commission has heard the most about is submerged aquatic vegetation, or SAV, protection and restoration through water quality improvements. That had 13 different recommended actions, but the big one that this commission has heard the most about is the recommended water clarity standard to ensure that adequate light penetration allows for seagrass growth. So we are continuing efforts on these issue papers and introducing a few more with this edition of the CHIP. And those issue papers are broadly organized under 3 different themes. One is ecosystem-based management for coastal habitats. One is a follow-up on SAB protection and restoration. And the other is planning for multi-decadal wetland change. So all of these build on previous editions of the CHIP. We're just advancing with additional research that's come out in the meantime. So before I jump into it, a little update on the timeline. We will be coming back to the Water Quality Committee in September with full drafts of each of these issue papers after the steering committee has signed off on it. And we'll be coming back to, at that point, we'll ask for approval to take it out for public comment. We'll incorporate any feedback from committees and public comment and come back to this commission in November. So jumping right into the first chapter, I'm going to breeze through these real quickly, so feel free to stop me if you have any questions. But the ecosystem-based management chapter, we have 2 major themes in here. One is an integrated ecosystem assessment. And so for that, what we're doing is working with some of the additional mapping and monitoring data that we've gathered from the past couple editions of the CHIP And looking back at how we as the Division of Marine Fisheries currently use ecosystem data in our fisheries management work. And we're gonna set up work group to start making some goals and targets on how to better integrate some of that ecosystem data. Once we have some of our goals in place, we're gonna start to develop some indicators. Fortunately, the collaboratory released a 25-year kind of retrospective study on the Fisheries Reform Act this past year. And in that, they included a really broad suite of indicators with long time series. So we have a great starting place. We've already got a head start on the data collection. We just need to narrow down what we're going to focus on. And once we have settled on that, we're going to work with the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Studies, which produces these report cards. Some of you might have seen them before for other estuaries, where they highlight like A, B, C, D, F grade for estuaries depending on the state of the indicators. So produces a really public-friendly communication tool that hopefully is also useful to decision makers. So this just summarizes the 4 actions we're going to go through there, which I kind of just highlighted for you. The other half of the ecosystem-based management chapter is advancing strategic habitat areas, which were identified in the first edition of the CHIP back in 2005 as a priority to develop. So moving these along, these are areas that are defined as high-quality connected habitats that were identified to protect biodiversity and ecological function through a non-regulatory approach. So in following the first CHIP, the identification process focused on a desktop mapping exercise that incorporated expert input and resulted in nomination of strategic habitat areas across the entire coast. Starting in 2018, Division of Marine Fisheries staff began a validation study where we went out into these areas, collected data on the habitats, and caught as many fish as we could just to see, okay, are these performing better relative to reference sites? So in this edition of the CHIP, we are summarizing data from what we call regions 3 and 4, which are the White Oak and Cape Fear River basins. And again, I'm going to breeze through this, but in short, we found habitat quality, connections between different habitats, and low levels of alteration within our strategic habitat areas. So these are areas that have lots of oyster reefs, seagrass beds, salt marshes, all in a connected matrix of habitats and relatively little development. We also found higher ecological function. The individual habitats that are in there were better quality. So marshes with higher stem density, higher amounts of seagrass presence. And starting to look at some of the fish data, we found a higher species richness and additional rare species in region 4 especially. That's the Cape Fear River Basin. In the White Oak River Basin, slightly more mixed results, pointing in the right direction, but we've got some nuance to dive into with the data there. So moving forward, we're going to look at using existing DMF sampling data from the Albemarle Sound and Pamlico Sound regions, combine all of that analysis together into one paper, and assuming everything checks out, we will make recommendations to the Marine Fisheries Commission to put some of these strategic habitat areas into rule designation, and from there develop the non-regulatory management options that have been discussed for these areas since they were first conceived. And by non-regulatory management options, we're thinking conservation focused, prioritizing funding and conservation effort for these areas, not so much a thou shalt not approach. Moving into the second chapter, planning for wetland change. The big thrust of this chapter is going to be laying kind of the groundwork for thin layer placement. So our coast salt marshes have some ability to keep up with sea level rise through capturing sediments that are naturally in the water column. However, as sea level rise has accelerated, we've started to see some of those salt marshes can't catch enough sediment. They're starting to drown and disappear in response to sea level rise. So we have, in other states, they've explored ways in which we can kind of accent that natural sediment accumulation by taking dredge material and placing it directly on the marsh in a relatively thin layer. Typically, we're talking on the order of 6 to 18 inches. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, we don't have a permit process for that. So any applications for thin layer placement currently have to go through the Coastal Resources Commission's variance process. So we have a couple projects in the hopper right now that may reach the variance process in the coming year or two, and seeing those as potential pilot projects. If they show promise, this is something we could explore to make it a little easier to for restoration practitioners to implement. So this issue paper is kind of laying the groundwork for that. We're going to be summarizing the best available science, existing guidance from other states for thin layer replacement projects. We're going to look at some case studies, existing information needs, and criteria for successful projects. Earlier this year, we hosted a workshop with the Division of Coastal Management and brought in several different DEQ agencies and some external partners, some restoration practitioners to talk about some of the concerns that agencies, both on the resource and permitting side, have about thin layer replacement projects and potential impacts, and kind of discuss some of that, document it, and start to move towards an understanding of what we need to move some of these projects forward. So that's directly informing this chapter of the CHIP and is building kind of the backbone of it. The other half of the sea level rise and coastal wetlands picture is marsh migration. We won't be spending quite as much time on this, but we will be continuing to implement the 2021 CHIPS recommendations to continue to address wetland migration through working with partnerships. Our friends at the Coastal Federation have some work started on this along with some other agencies. So continuing to advance planning for marsh migration and potentially looking at a workshop or research symposium to talk about best practices in a couple of years. And for chapter 3, our submerged aquatic vegetation, or SAV, protection and restoration chapter. I'm just going to start this with a slide discussing a report that APNEP recently released. There's a lot of detail in there. I'm just going to hit some of the quick highlight numbers from that, which is from 2006 to 2020. We continued to lose over 1% per year of our seagrass extent, which might not sound like a lot, but that's 15% in the time period. And if you look 30 years into the future, that's another 35% that we would be losing if we continue at this rate. So it's a concerning rate of loss. And within the seagrass beds that we still have, the continuous beds have transitioned to patchy beds. We've lost 50% of our continuous seagrass meadows. And the losses have been most notable at the deep edge of the seagrass beds. So that implies a connection to water quality and decreased water clarity, light not penetrating deep enough. So that leads into the first section of the SAB chapter, which is to continue the proposal from the 2021 CHIP focused on developing a water clarity standard. I won't linger on this. This commission's heard from DWR staff on this earlier this year. I'm sure you'll hear again soon. But this remains a priority. It remains the biggest threat we see to seagrasses. And so it's something we really want to get some action on. But while we're doing that, we have other options that we're going to pursue at the same time. So improving water clarity allows for passive restoration of our seagrass beds, but there's growing interest in active restoration. So taking seeds or transplants of our seagrasses and putting them into areas that no longer have seagrass, but should still have the conditions to support it. So a lot of this work is inspired by with the work that Virginia has done in its coastal bays and that Maryland has done. And so there's a growing interest in the private sector in getting some of these projects off the ground. And there's some initial pilot projects being done by UNC and some other universities right now to look at what this might look like. So this edition of the CHIP is going to lay out the permitting framework for that and look at some of the ecological and practical considerations to keep in mind there. And finally, last part of the SAV chapter, the Marine Fisheries Commission looked at shrimp trawl restrictions to protect SAV in 2023, decided against those specific restrictions, came to staff and said, go broad, explore our full Marine Fisheries Commission authority and come back to us with some more holistic proposals. So that's the approach we're taking here. Looking at the full authority and looking at down the road what rulemaking from the Marine Fisheries Commission might look like. So with that, I'll leave this here as a summary of the actions that are going to be in this edition of the CHIP. And Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
coastal habitat study, does it have anywhere in this study? You said you were going to bring it back at our next meeting.
Yes, we'll be at the Water Quality Committee, next
Happens to
meeting.
be the quality committee. Okay. Is there anything in the report in reference to, go to slide 18? It might be 16 or 18. Please.
18.
That's it. That's it. That's it. Back up.
Oh.
Back up. That one. That reminds me of Cape Fear and dredging and spoils and taking from surface water or basins, and here is just different, but it's scattering. So as you build out spoils like we are at the Cape Fear and the Corps of Engineers, along with the state, and dredging and creating spoils, then the PFAS issue has come up, Mr. Chairman. So my question would be, is there anything in this report that would indicate working with the Corps or working with the state and how we, not just in the Cape Fear, where the port is there for dredging or for any other dredging in reference to PFAS moving forward? Is there part of this study or has this been brought up? We have two members that are on this. So I didn't know if Commissioner Twitty, or she's not here today, but is there anything that's been brought up on the study in reference to that?
I defer that to Mr. Deaton if he can answer that. I believe that anything with thin layer placement does have to look at potential contamination in order to authorize that. There's a process for that. You can explain that better than I can.
Yeah, so PFAS consideration is certainly a concern. That was one that was raised with the Cape Fear deepening project. And any sort of contaminant in the dredge material remains a concern. That was something that when we hosted that workshop earlier this year, several staff noticed or said, we need to make sure contaminants are addressed. So we have not focused on PFAS specifically in this draft, but if that's something that would be of interest to the commission, we can flesh that out a little bit.
I think there's twofold, Mr. Chairman, if I can follow up real quick. Twofolds, that is water quality, is surface water, and is deposited and creating spoils out in the part of the coastal area of North Carolina and all parts of coastal in one way or another. So for the report, I'm sort of discouraged somewhat that it might not have been something that was in a resolution or something that came out of this group that would identify the possibility of closing up ports or stopping dredging that would have an economic impact on our state, on the coastal part, or any fisheries or any dredging piece that would be stopped for any reason without guidelines of preparing those end users and those stakeholders to anticipate what the study is going to present to the state, to the committee, and to the EMC. That's just a concern I have, and I was thinking that there was somewhere maybe in the report, or you could find out and bring it back to us when you bring this report back, is that some of that study is brought. That's an issue in the state of North Carolina on the coastal piece at this time.
Let me just say, you're the committee chair, so y'all two can start working today
Thank
if you
you.
want to on getting that information and getting your committee ready.
Thank you.
I do have the same concerns you have. I've seen, it's not our lane, but I've seen a lot of bit of turmoil about dredging in the river basin down in Cape Fear in the Turner Basin. But yet this doesn't mention it. And yet I used to work a lot with beach and inlet waterways. I think we're still dredging stuff and throwing it on the beach without a lot of testing. So again, it's not necessarily our lane, but there are certainly questions that the department's pushing in some areas on sediments, and we may not see it pushing everywhere. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two representatives on that board, so that's just planting the seed. I appreciate that.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Orm Zabaleta.
Yeah, not a question, just a comment. First off, thank you for the presentation, and I'm really looking forward to reading what you've pulled together. Just as a point of reference, which I'm sure you're aware of, but EPA's has a lot of activity on coastal systems in terms of indicator development and assessment. So past reports on the environment, as well as a national coastal assessment under the former EMAP program. I think that may be some good sort of resource benchmarking materials. So as you look at current condition, it'll give you some past reference where you can see how things may have improved, where there may be some trouble spots to help guide you going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Tweed? Mr. Allison?
You mentioned the University of Maryland rating system. Are you retaining the University of Maryland to do this?
Yes, so they have a group within the university that regularly contracts out with other state agencies and nonprofits to
I'm
do
very
this work.
familiar with them. I'm just curious as to why you would go to Maryland when we've got UNC and Duke and that quaint little engineering school downtown all have major coastal research facilities. Why would you go to Maryland?
They have a track record of doing this. We haven't, we can explore working with, we can talk to some of the folks at UNC and Duke and that other school downtown and explore. The reason this group particularly has a track record of producing these public-friendly reports, maintaining them, they have a process for it. So we can certainly explore working with local universities, though.
Well, it sounds like the horse has left the barn. You're going to use the University of Maryland. I just wondered why. Another question, local jurisdictions, this plan affects local jurisdiction planning requirements. So I'm wondering if you could explain that a little bit and how your protection plan affects, say, the town of Beaufort or Morehead City or something like that with the state plans that have to be integrated with local plans.
I'll take a stab at that. So this plan, I hope I'm not saying anything wrong here, is not going to be something that's going to place any burden on the localities. So this, to the discussion earlier of guidelines versus procedures, this from a local government's perspective, this is guidance. There's nothing here that would necessarily require anything of local governments and any of their planning work.
Am I confusing this with the coastal management plan?
Yes. And so our staff talk together, work together. The plans will interact sometimes, but that would be through more of coastal management's work.
Okay.
Okay, guys, 11:30, one or two more, and then we got to move on. Any others? Okay, hearing none, thank you, and we'll look forward to working with the committee to bring this before the EMC. And we've done this a couple times now, guys, as commission. Again, this is one of those things that took 8 or 10 years ago. It took about 3 or 4 times through the commission to get agreement. So this is not a rubber stamp. So there's a lot of information in here for you guys to see. Sometimes it's gone fast and sometimes it's gone slow. So,
question for the chair.
Yes, sir.
What is, this will come to the Water Quality Committee. What is the expectation for the Water Quality Committee's action? Are we supposed to recommend the full commission bless the plan, or what's the outcome of our involvement?
All 3 commissions must approve the plan. That's part of it. So it's got to go through screening.
Okay.
This is not rulemaking, as we were just told. So the committee will see it as a topic through water quality. We will make the final decision in front of the EMC as an EMC as a whole of whether we adopt the chip or not, or these, whatever it brings in.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. The next item is Hurricane Hugo response, and I'll give you the background of this.
You dated yourself.
Helene, did I say Hugo? That was a big one, guys. It impressed me very much. I have several stories about that one, personal stories. So anyway, Hurricane Helene.
Dating yourself.
But I will say this. One of the reasons we did this was I heard, I think we've all heard Commissioner Yarborough, who can't be here today, talk about Tropical Storm Fred stuff still be laying around up in the mountains, washing off in the rivers when Helene came. And we are in the middle of hurricane season. And we're going to have probably one on the coast or one in the mountains. And here we are with Helene almost 2 years in the books come this fall. I wanted to know what were the lessons learned, because that was one of the things we talked about, and what could this commission be doing to help? Because when that next storm comes and it washes out the mountains again, They're gonna say, why did the EMC and DEQ not do more? And we need to be able to say, this is what we did or we didn't do. And the same down east. So what were the question is, we'll hear today in just a few minutes from Assistant Secretary Mazemore, what lessons did we learn? Now, one thing we did do was Commissioner Yarborough, and then I worked with that behind the scenes, but most of the lead of DEQ worked to get an MOA together so that we know how to handle hurricane response. That's the biggest thing we did. And it would be great to see that go into action, not if we have it, but when we have one this fall. So we'll let Assistant Secretary Mazemore talk about that and other lessons learned and what the EMC can do to help in hurricane recovery. So Commissioner Mazemore, Commissioner, Assistant Secretary Mazemore.
It's been a long 2 days, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for.
I'm still thinking ahead of something.
That's not a motion or a demotion?
Hard to say.
Chair Solomon.
She's commissioners. So,
First of all, thank you for inviting me. If I may indulge in just an announcement, a notification to the commission related to the previous presentation. The Marine Fisheries Commission will be meeting on August 19th and 20th in Raleigh, North Carolina, not at the coast. And part of the commission's agenda, they have asked for the department to do a informational item, as you call it, but an educational item for that commission on water quality science and water quality management. So our team, Richard's team, has been preparing for a series of short presentations that'll cover water quality standards to inform the commission members how the two commissions interact and they're interrelated in terms of protection of our water resources. And based on those standards overview, we will cover how we do 401 reviews and protection of the wetlands and the coastal resources. And we'll also cover wastewater systems, how those discharges and the rules that this body oversees, how those processes affect and support the marine fisheries mission. So hope that just a heads up, we can get you some information if you're willing or have time, feel free to go and visit that. So thank you. On this slide, so thanks for inviting me. I was thinking back, Hurricane Helene happened a couple of days after my birthday 2 years ago, and I sort of remember that. You all asked for us to come back in 3 months and said, what did we find? What are we doing? How are we reacting? And that presentation was a series of one slides on so many different programs. And we just gave you a laundry full of all the things that every one of the divisions behind me have been, were involved in. I will say that in my time at DEQ, this was an unprecedented mobilization of an entire agency and across state government. And I'm sure Department of Ag, Department of Health and Human Services, everyone, but at DEQ, we had every staff member involved at some stage in the beginning months. 2 years down, now you say, we are still involved in Hurricane Helene recovery efforts. And so with that light, I wanted to think back and focus on, can't do everything during a 15, 20-minute overview. So I decided after talking with Director Evans that we would focus on 3 major programs that deals with debris removal. When we deal with debris removal, it's mainly our 401, 404 programs across the state. That is the first out the gate in terms of assisting and working with the municipalities and the federal agencies to get this debris out of the waterways. I'll talk about what we did then, which programs are triggered and what we learned off of it, and also how we're prepared to handle the next storm. And then once that debris is removed, then what happens to that is the next 2 series of topics I'm going to cover. Both our Division of Waste Management and Division of Air Quality are involved in that management of those debris material. And I'll go through the way the temporary sites were identified, the process we followed, and then ultimately how that waste was reduced to the various means that we have under the department's purview. So I'll kick it off with the 401 water quality certifications. Just as a background, you all know this, but a water quality certification from the Division of Water Resources required when any federally permitted activity results in a discharge to waters of the state. This commonly is accompanied with a 404, Clean Water Act, Section 404 permit that the Army Corps of Engineers issues. A 401 certification is only triggered when a federal permit is required. And so when we issue a certification in the 401 program, it says this project will not degrade waters of the state or violation of any of the state water quality standards. So we are working side by side in a disaster response mode with the Army Corps of Engineers in a typical 401 and a 404 review processes. So when we had Hurricane Helene, one of the unprecedented issues with Helene was the debris, lots of trees, lots of man-made material, whether it's tanks or refrigerators or tires. All of this debris ended up in the water system because it flowed downstream. And so priority was to get these things out of the waterways. So the Army Corps of Engineers was assigned as the lead agency on the federal level, and they mobilized and set up a camp just outside of the counties that were affected. And the colonel asked the DEQ to be the lead state agency to support the interactions between federal and state responses. And as a result, DEQ became the voice and the implementer from the state's perspective. Our goal was to allow local governments and contractors to get to work quickly by removing the storm debris and ensure confidence that if we followed our guidance at the federal and the state level, and I'll go into the guidance process in a minute, then there would be minimal authorization required at the state level in terms of permitting or regulatory approval processes, as long as we created these guardrails of what is within that could be allowed. So in a 404, 401 review, we typically break those reviews into 5, and this is me sort of working with the staff, and we broke it down into 5 different categories. So a review could be related to stream bank repair or stabilization. Most people don't know about this, but many projects are likely going to be exempt from a 404 permitting review. As a result, there's a no 401 review or certification required. We often get lots of calls and questions about, what we're doing, whether we're going to delay this, whether we're getting in the way. In most of these cases, this was not something that we were involved or required to be involved. A second type of category of projects are small stream crossing repairs and culvert replacements. Again, these are types of projects, and I'll go into the exemption criteria that the Corps has developed, can also be excluded from the 404 review, and therefore the 401 certification was not required. The next group is the debris cleanup and removal. Here we're talking about stream channels that are used to remove the rest of the debris. In this case, if that activity is conducted by the USAs, then no 401 certification is required. But if it is conducted by an entity other than USAs, then it does trigger a DWR review. And what we decided to do, based on lessons learned from previous storms and the process that we have, is that we developed a series of 2 sets of guidances. One was issued in 2015, another one was issued, 2025, another was issued pretty soon after. And those guidances became the framework for how we did the category 3 type of 401 reviews. And then the most important one that really is the bottom of the barrel, kind of the big projects require an individual 404 or 401 certification. It triggers both the Army's review as well as the EQ's review. And here we're looking at processes that can be implemented to expedite the cleanup process. And I'll talk about each one of these at a really high level, but happy to answer your questions later on. And the last categories are both public and private roads and bridges. So related to categories 1 and 2, these are types of work that does not require 404 and therefore does not require 401 certification. The Army Corps of Engineers guidance of what is considered exempted work includes all of the things that we have in those first two categories. So damage, restoring recently damaged parts due to the storm itself, such as dikes and dams and levees, breakwaters and causeways and bridge abatements. All of these, if they fall into this categorical exemption in the description of that kind of removal, then the Corps exempts them. And then we follow that same process for those projects. And many of these projects, and Paul and Michael's team here led this work for us. They can tell you more about how many were there, what percentage of the projects fell into these categories 1 and 2. And the category 3 is debris removal and stream cleanup of post-storm. And this is where many of the Haywood County issues and a lot of the Buncombe County issues arose. Generally, a permit is not required for this activity. And I'll explain a little bit why. For the federal government work, this is largely exempted when because the coordination is happening between the permitting and the resource agency. So a resource agency is typically the USA's on behalf of the FEMA and other federal agencies. So they have their contractor, they operate under the nationwide permits, and then they have their standard of procedures for managing this debris removal. But it also comes down to DWR to do a 401 review. Here, what we did is we coordinated with USA's and we developed two series of guidance documents. And these guidance documents are posted on our website, and it basically, they're not rules, but they're basically a way to provide some instructions and recommendations for those contractors that are outside the USA's purview. So let's say a local government may be hiring a contractor, or a community might be hiring a contractor. Those are under DWR's review. And to avoid delays and confusion, our guidance became sort of a driving point, or here's what you need to consider. And then we were available to go out there, work with those teams to provide additional guidance. And then lastly, this is the large group, which is working when there is a 404 permit required and a 401 certification required. For a disaster recovery process, most of the Army Corps of Engineers activities are under the nationwide permits. These NWP, what they call permits, are sort of canned permits that are designed for certain type of activities post-storm. And I have listed a few of them from maintenance to bank stabilization. Each of these nationwide permits contain all of the requirements, whether it's a bank stabilization here or in Tennessee. They're going to deploy this standardized permit. And corresponding to that on the right-hand column are the general certification under the Division of Water Resources. So these general certifications really allow DWR to manage this at a holistic and an expedited way without having to recreate and or reinvent anything. So this list gives you a sort of the most typically called upon nationwide permits that were utilized at Hurricane Helene. And then the next bullet says if a project does qualify for general certification, we do a quick review under our certificate of coverage process. There is no public notice required here because the general certification itself has gone through public process. And we get these permits, certifications out as soon as the Corps issues those permits. You can go to these 2 levels of guidance that are on our website right now. And so moving forward, one of the lessons learned were there was one series of activities. It's under Nationwide Permit 27. The Army Corps of Engineers has the NWP. It's for aquatic ecosystem restoration, enhancement, and establishment activities. So many of these stream bank stabilization and channel realignment were needed because it was such a catastrophic storm. And these projects were directed by federal or state agencies under various federal funds and state funds, matching funds. And so these projects were part of rebuilding the Western North Carolina. And the 404 NWP 27 allowed them to expedite that review but we didn't have a corresponding 401 certification. So DWR acted very quickly. They public noticed and modified the corresponding 401 certification in a general certification 8578. And that got aligned with the nationwide permit 27. And there is exclusive language that's now added in that general certification that says if you are under this oversight of these named agencies, then the burden of requirements are minimized. So staff believes that this will help us in the future. The framework will be in place to help expedite getting projects to work that are under the direction of resource agencies. It supports wise use of our limited resources and also time. So this is one of the things that are ready to go. And another item that we put in place is a request to the Army Corps of Engineers for a future storm. And here we asked for a regionalized permit, a general permit. We went to the Corps and said, what if we created a regionalized general permit that allows us to create a region and rather than individualized permits? That process required us to go through our process, and the Corps has just completed their review and process. So that request was granted. The Corps developed the RGP 07, they call a regional general permit, that DWR could certify. This required liaisons, and I didn't mention this earlier, that every one of the activities was not just with the Army Corps of Engineers. We had Wildlife Resource Commission, we had local agencies, we had USDA and DNCR, many of the affected agencies working towards this activities that I just described. The regional general certification would relieve applications from having to obtain an individual 401 certifications for storm repair projects in the future. This went through a public process, and it is available, and it can be used in an expedited fashion in the future storms. And then finally, roads and bridges. I broke this up into public roads and bridges. This is under DOT's purview. We have been coordinating with Division of Emergency Management and NCDOT on those major roads and bridge projects that would require an authorization from DWR. This again was coordinated with USA's Wildlife Resource Commission and other state and federal entities. We do have a coordinated approach towards whether it's a small road or a major highway like I-40, and those projects are moving forward. And lessons learned from previous storms has improved our interagency interactions. What was new about Hurricane Helene was private roads and bridges. Enormous number of bridges going to someone's home in a mountain or a community center or a farm. All of those were either underwater or destroyed. The legislature provided some funding to bring some of those private systems back online. And what we wanted to do was, if they required any assistance from us or review, we mobilized whether we were required to be in place or not, but we supported the collective effort. Michael's team here, there are over 4,000, I believe, private roads and bridge projects, and most of them are under permission to proceed. But the key thing that we had to work this out was there were concerns over Wildlife Resource Commission's concerns over habitat and the protection of those resources. There was a mapping system developed and increased communication on sensitive areas and how to minimize impacts to that. So this process, what I call the framework, allowed this private roads and bridges, those 4,000 some projects to proceed as fast as they could. And our teams are coordinating on a regular basis and continues to do that for these projects because they're still in works. And I'm gonna shift to debris management. I'm gonna swim through this, please, because I know you guys are probably tired and wanna get on to the end of the day. The debris management is now we have all this material. It has to go somewhere. and you can't just take it out from one place and dump it in another place. So the Division of Waste Management has been charged. And this particular, as I said, is a catastrophic event, incident, and the definitions of why this was defined as a catastrophic incident is everyone knows the reasons. But normally, a debris management program would have required a state match, and the federal funding was available. But this was such a extraordinary situation that federal funds took care of a lot of the cost for debris removal. And so we were engaged with the USACE on both the front end, on the permitting side, as well as on the back end on management of that debris. There was a task force that was put together, DEQ as the lead role on this end also. We gave local governments many options to consider on who to go with, subcontractors, and who to go with related to the actual work itself. The added debris was not normally eligible for FEMA public assistance, such as private debris and commercial property, but there was so much of that we had to take that into account as part of our state's recovery. And so our team were aware of that. It was not, we can't take this material, we got to handle this material, we got to figure out a way to do that. And part of that required sort of looking into the tools in our toolbox. And this slide here gives you two of the biggest tools that we utilized. The first one is the statute under 130A 303. This is the authority that the legislature is given to, in the state of emergency, to DEQ secretary. It's a broad authority over decision-making to abate hazards and address waste collection and transport. To my knowledge, I don't think we had to exercise this, but it is available. And we were cognizant of that. And if needed, if a community or a local government said, we have a problem, we got to get this water system up and running, we need this authority to be used to get us back on our feet. However, the second bullet, which is the rulemaking that this body did back in 2021, was actually the solution that we relied on the most. And this was news to me, and I wanted to share that with you. So after Florence and Matthew, all the lessons learned was that we had disparate programs across the department and state agency that did debris management. And the Environmental Management Commission worked with the division to create a set of rules to manage that debris in future storms. Those rules are in 13B 0208. This grants permit exemption to temporary debris staging and reduction sites. We call it TDSR sites, and it has to meet certain circumstances or criteria. These rules were codified. It has been the backdrop of all of the things we've done, but it codified all of the things we were doing through policy and program back to 1990s. I won't get into the details of that, but we can focus on this if there are more questions or comments on that. So the result of applying those rules and the lessons learned off of previous storms resulted in a very expedited evaluation of where to move this temporary debris. We're in a mountainous area, land is limited, waterways have moved. So it was really challenging for staff to find large enough areas. But within 72 hours of the storm, sites were evaluated through with the criteria in the rule, and 170 sites thus far were identified as staging areas. Currently, I believe 155 are still in, 69 sites are still in use, and 20 million cubic yards of vegetated debris and C&D debris have been collected. We still have a lot to go, as you've seen. Debris is everywhere. Yeah. I'm not going to go into the details of this, but we have other tools in the toolbox These legislative authorities and approaches are available for us in a future storm. We can walk through this as needed in the future to see if there's any tweaks that are needed. But thus far, our staff is saying that what we have is sufficient based on what we learned of the coastal storms and mountain storms. We did see challenges with the debris management. One was, as I mentioned earlier, limited recycling infrastructure exists and most of it was damaged. We had limited landfill capacity. So one of the legislation allows us to move that debris to another landfill that may be outside of the disaster declared area. And we did use that exercise. About 750 tons were taken to Tennessee and South Carolina. We permitted one industrial landfill to accept the storm debris. There are lots of historic preservation sites, so this required siting coordination with DNCR and local governments to make sure we didn't put stuff where there was concern about the preservation issues related to that site. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about, in some cases, you can't landfill the waste. You can reduce the volume through incineration and other means. So our Division of Air Quality works side by side with Division of Waste Management. And here, you all are aware of this. We used this in the past. We used it multiple times. EPA's regulations for incineration systems do have some real requirements, but there are flexibilities when there is an emergency situation. So EPA did grant DAQ's request for no action assurance to provide permitting relief. So if a site needed to use an ACI to handle this emergency debris, then they received an ACI, no action assurance, related to compliance enforcement. Currently, EPA has renewed that multiple times. That most recent ACI approval expires in September. And Mike and Taylor can talk a little bit about their plans for beyond that period. But you also heard about use this material to create biochar. These are combustion devices, as you see in the example later on, that allows the debris to be combusted at enough temperature that you can create a soil amendment that can then be used to spread in agricultural fields. We received guidance from EPA as to how to manage the biochar systems, and we have relayed that to the people that are operating those systems. Looking ahead, there are federal rule changes in works. Taylor championed the need for federal regulations to be revised. EPA heard us, and a new streamlined ACI federal rule was proposed earlier this spring. They plan to finalize that rule, and we provided comments on improving that rule to meet our learned activities and what we would want in a future federal rule. EPA is expected to finalize that by the end of 2026. And then lastly, as I mentioned, the coordination between DWM and DAQ is internally worked really well. But throughout this process, we also learned that there are many other entities. As we place some of this material, some of it caught on fire because they were mulch, ground up, the heat and all of those circumstances caused it to be of concern. And so our staff worked with the Office of State Fire Marshal and looked at the enforcement authority and also the oversight that they can provide on these pile sizes and separating and protecting the area from fires, because we have concerns that there is millions and millions of acres in land that is not removed, and that's ripe for wildfires. So this interaction with Office of State Fire Marshal continues today. We'll develop additional interagency process and procedures to help us in the future. So with that, there are many other programs that we created supporting guidance and instructions. This website I've shared with you last time has been revamped, and you can go to this link here and look at how our guidance provides septic disposal guidance and other areas. That's it. Here are the program contacts. If you need to talk to anybody, feel free to reach out to me or John Evans. And then finally, last two slides are here. I'm not going to go through it. This is all the funding that is going to Western North Carolina on debris management. We received EPA grants, and most of those grants has been used for very innovative and first time ever type of assistance projects for recycling and debris management.
Vice Chair Reardon.
Yeah, great job, Susan. Thank you for doing this. It's a remarkable amount of work been done. One simple question, I guess. Is there a mechanism for those people that live in that area to give feedback on how well this worked and their direct feedback? Are we capturing that? Is there a website they go to? How do we categorize and get the feedback from those that's been affected by it? Even in our best efforts, feedback from them on did it work, how well did it work, and where it didn't work is vital.
I think it's a great idea. I'll work with the division directors to see if there's a way we could create a.
Just how did we do, you know?
Right, right. We have so many boots on the ground, you're right, but those boots are talking about their area perhaps. Our secretary's been out there almost every week. All of us have been involved with the community and local government officials. But I like the idea of maybe having a one-stop portal for sending thoughts, comments. We can look into that, putting on our website and disseminating that through all of these public activities that we're doing.
Mr. Jasperson.
Great presentation. Just a quick question. On slide 5 about the sort of debris removal, is there any difference between like public land and state parks for any of the removal and the riverbeds and things like that? Are state parks just treated differently? The reason why I'm asking is like there's a lot of debris I see in like Eno River, Umstead, that is just waiting to clog up during the next storm. And I've seen it at Grayson Highland Park and many of the sort of state parks or public parks.
From what I know, and I'll let the staff come up here if they have answers, but many of the state parks that are big enough are already in federal jurisdictional areas too. And so you would think that if there is activity occurring, it would trigger Army Corps' oversight. So that's a possibility. Like, let's say Grandfather Mountain.
Yeah.
Right? That's it.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
And we can look into that as to whether any of these projects, we were involved in the, and we have a lot of good and bad experiences out of this, but the Nolichucky Gorge and the river was damaged. The the CSX bridge was damaged, and there was significant activity, and there was a significant public concern over, equipment and how the department and the Corps was managing this. It is a historic site. I'm not sure if it's a state park or not, but it's an example of there is an intersection between, it's not just a park thing. It does require state and federal oversight.
Okay.
If it is state waters of the state or the waters of USA.
Commissioner Orms of the Leto.
Yeah, again, thank you, Sushma, for the presentation. One of the things we saw, especially with Katrina and others, but with this particular storm, I'm curious if you ran into any issues or have lessons learned about interstate coordination between South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, not only on immediate response, but also on the recovery end. I saw on the slide where some of the debris Tennessee took, but are there other things that you've learned that can help you going forward?
Right, the Nolichucky example and we did interact with Tennessee quite a bit. In fact, we were talking with Tennessee within the first few months of this, not just on that, but EPA involvement. I didn't cover the water and wastewater systems and dam safety and all of that, but as far as coordinating with the states, EPA and federal agencies, we had our ability to interact with other states. Of course, it was highly competitive. We wanted those
That's what I
federal
was wondering.
dollars to come to North Carolina, and we were the first state to submit a spending plan under Division of Water Infrastructure. We got most of the money, the creative grant money that I described that DWM wrote. That is an enormous amount of money that North Carolina got that many other states didn't. But dealing with a common problem that's across the borders, we're routinely working with our counterparts.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary Maysmore. Let's keep moving. We're gonna announcement for us, the Silver Mission Group is not meeting after lunch, so we'll go to 12:30. And then we'll break for lunch and dismiss at 12:30 if we get that far. Now we'll take a lunch break, and we'll come back. Okay. So Toby, we'll give it to you first for your comments.
Try to. Good afternoon, Commission. Glad to be with you again. It's not that long. And it's actually some good news that I've got pretty much all the way around, and it's also, it can be considered a supplement to Deputy Secretary Maysmore's updates on Hurricane Helene. So the dam safety program has moved forward with publishing the grant application process for the $10 million grants available under the additional hurricane recovery funding from the General Assembly. That's from the Hurricane Recovery Act 2. We received 21 applications in that initial notice of funding opportunity, for which 7 were initially eligible, but 1 of those withdrew their application. The 6 remaining were processed, and we currently have $6.58 million obligated and contracted with the owners of Flowers Lake Dam, Lake Junaluska, Feeney Dam, Lady Marion Dam, Warrior Mountain Dam, and Laurel Lakes Dam. These are located respectively in Catawba, Haywood, Henderson, McDowell, Polk, and Rutherford counties. We also worked through our second notice of funding opportunity for that first $10 million. And the remaining amount was $3.42 million. We're in the process of reviewing 36 applications totaling an amount of $36.3 million. So the asks are 10 times more than we have available under that first set of grants. Okay, in the latest budget from the General Assembly, we've also been provided an additional $20 million in state dam safety grants for repair or removal specific to 10 dams that have been identified to receive funding from this grant. Those include Lake Coffee Dam, Mill Pond Dam, Big Hungry River Dam, Tuxedo Hydroelectric Dam, Capitola Dam, Henry River Dam, Ridgecrest Pond Dam, Moravian Camp Lake Dam, Lake Junaluska, and Roaring Gap Club Lake Dam. These dams are located in Watauga, Avery, Henderson, Madison, Burke, Buncombe, Ashe, Haywood, and Allegheny counties. 7 of these dams applied for assistance in the second round of the first, which can be applied into this one. Those 7, right now, those 7 are totaling in an amount of $18 million. And the current cap per legislation is $4 million per dam. So with the other 3 dams that we're expecting to get requests from, they're going to go over that $20 million request. So we're going to have to look at competitive review based on the prior legislation that they gave us for ranking public at risk, which is following our HHPD process under federal grants. But we're looking forward to being able to get that money out as soon as possible. Also, in regard to updates for helping Western North Carolina with Helene, the budget bill also gave us authority to be able to produce and provide inundation maps for our dam owners that don't have the capability of obtaining those. So, we've got staff, and they've also earmarked part of our emergency fund that's existing to be able to use for that process, and then also provide technical assistance to those dam owners in helping them develop their emergency action plans overall. So that's another plus and positive that we have for helping North Carolina, Western North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina for dams as a result of or leading up to and preparing for hurricanes or natural disasters. The final thing Stormwater section, DEM staff's been working with IT and developing our Access DEQ conversion from BIMS with Laserfish document management for post-construction stormwater application and compliance processes, and combining the MPDS construction stormwater process with the existing erosion sedimentation control application process. Post-construction stormwater is currently complete and in testing with external users right now. So it's sort of a soft launch with that. And also the combined ENSC and construction stormwater solution is currently going through internal user testing at this time, and we plan to have it implemented later this summer. So that's all the comments I have. Didn't know if you might have any questions.
Questions for Director Vincent?
All right. Glad to be with you.
Director Scott?
Thank you, Chairman Solomon, members of the commission. I'll be brief. I think we've already touched on a few of the comments I wrote up today and between yesterday, but we are pleased to announce that we have a new Superfund section chief, Billy Meyer. So one of our 5 sections in the Division of Waste Management is under new leadership. Bill Heineke retired. So Billy came out of our dry cleaning program as a manager in the DISCA program, and we welcome aboard as the new section chief for the Superfund section. Just to highlight one thing that Sushma touched on in her presentation, we're really excited about the Hurricane Helene grant opportunity for further debris management. Some estimates are upwards of 50 million cubic yards of debris were generated by Helene. That made it a catastrophic event in the realm of Katrina and other major U.S. Storms, but still a lot of debris out there. So this particular grant opportunity with the Division of Waste Management Solid Waste section will help to address that further private property debris, streamway debris, even agricultural land debris that still exists and needs to be managed, and provide funding on that front. So we're really excited about that. $18 million worth of funding. Applications are open through mid-September. Talked about it briefly today. Secretary Wilson touched on this. We touched on it a little bit in committee, but definitely an increasing scope of work with the collaboratory in North Carolina rural fire stations. I mentioned this to the commission because with the collaboratory sampling 400 North Carolina fire stations with private wells, we're unfortunately finding PFAS in those wells, possibly due to aqueous film forming foam. But as we sample around those fire stations, we're also finding potentially other sources of PFAS. One example would be Pleasant Garden, North Carolina, Guilford County. We can look at the signature of PFAS. We know what AFFF generates from PFHXS to PFOS to 62FTS. We know what it can look like in groundwater. We're often seeing some PFAS signatures that differ. So that scope of work continues, as we mentioned, under the Bernard Allen program. And the last item I just wanted to briefly touch on also was permit transformation process, which has also been mentioned to the commission. We continue to put forth the effort in our UST program, our biggest permitting program in waste management, almost 6,000 permits per year, all of North Carolina's gas stations, with the opportunity for them to submit applications on lines. And we're building a lot of gas stations. If you've not seen the sheets, the Wawas, and I'm sure you heard about Buc-ee's in the Piedmont, there's a lot of gas station permitting going on in North Carolina. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Scott. Any questions for Director Scott? Okay, call Director Rogers up. And before he talks, as he gets to stand, everybody hold your breath and wait on it. About you. You have to talk now. You have to tell them they're holding their breath.
So, my director's report, we'll run through that real quickly. Updates on
Oh, you
the,
didn't do it. Tell them.
not yet. I got to do my report, right?
No, do it now. Just do it now. They're holding their breath.
Okay. So, just wanted to inform the board, spoken with Chair Solomon, I think also former Chair Smith as well. I will be retiring August 31st. So this is my last commission meeting.
Y'all can excel now.
So,
Excel. That's quite a bit to take in. Isn't it?
but anyway, it has been truly a great experience. I've been with the department again for about 4.5 years. And in my communication with staff, I'll let them know it's been one of the most fulfilling professional experiences I've had in the 30 years that I've been working for the state. So kudos to the staff. Kudos to the support that they provided. And it's just a wonderful group of people that take on challenges every day and do a great job considering the number we have and the challenges that they do face. So I look forward to the remaining 6-7 weeks that I have. We're going to go out. There is still a lot of work to be done. We'll be communicating a transition plan as soon as we can there. But again, it's been quite the ride here at DWR, and I'm looking forward to retirement anyway. So on with the report. We keep y'all updated on the water and wastewater systems related that were impacted by Hurricane Helene. I will note that the public water supply is lacking two that have been on there since the beginning. Old Fort and Spruce Pine rolled off the list, so they up in full operation with no concerns. Most of the other ones in water and wastewater are no changes for the most part as they await additional support and finishing up projects that they are doing. A little update on the low flow, no flow rule. We are winding down that process and have been through the process. I've summarized that process in my update. It's currently over at EPA for their final review. And we have moved that forward and look forward to hearing back from them. Also, drought update. You heard a great update yesterday. Actually, there's been another map issued since yesterday. The shrinking of E4 around the 8-county area that Klaus talked about yesterday. A little bit of Wake County's been removed, but we've also added the southern part of Brunswick County into E4. So they've got a lot of wildfires going on in that area and are being heavily impacted there. Our vacancy rate seems to continue to go down. That's a good thing. I think we're at about 8% now, 39 vacancies across the division. So we're glad to have staff on hand to help support our efforts in the field. Commissioner Jaspers, just a reflection on your parks question. I was actually in the department when it was the Department of Environment, Health, and Natural Resources. And we had great discussions between forestry and parks about land management. They do it very differently. And parks typically, if it falls, it falls. And they don't do a whole lot of anything. And I don't know whether that's a result of what you're referencing or not. But also, if they do want to remove things, they follow the same process that anyone else with regards to requesting 404s and 401s and that kind of thing. So just an update there. With that, Mr. Chairman, Commission, I'll close my remarks.
I'll tell you congratulations afterwards, but any other questions for right now about the division for Director Rogers? It's weird, that's the last time I'll say that in front of the horseshoe, but anyway.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Director Abruzitskas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing quite as dramatic as Director Rogers' opening remarks, but maybe slightly dramatic item to update on today. You'll recall from some prior updates for the commission, we noted the status of the annual PM 2.5 National Ambient Air Quality Standards that were strengthened in 2024, and where EPA last November requested to the DC Circuit to vacate that standard. And so we've been kind of waiting ever since then to see how the DC Circuit was going to respond. And so they did. On June 26th, three-judge panel of the DC Circuit unanimously upheld the 2024 PM 2.5 standard where it was tightened under the previous administration for fine particulate matter. The case was before three judges, Judges Millett, Childs, and Senior Circuit Judge Ginsburg, and the opinion of the court was filed by Senior Circuit Judge Ginsburg. And the opinion states, quote, after initially defending the new rule, the EPA now moves to vacate the rule on the grounds that it exceeded its authority and acted unreasonably by failing to consider costs. Because these arguments lack merit, we deny the petitions for review and the motion for vacature, end quote. So what's next? Well, EPA could appeal this decision to the full DC Circuit or to the Supreme Court. However, that's beginning to appear unlikely, as just last Friday, EPA announced their 2026 Unified Agenda. And there they listed final designations of areas as either in attainment or non-attainment with the 2024 PM 2.5 annual standard as happening in July, this month. So, as a reminder, EPA missed those designations and that deadline they were required to do that in February of this year. And then they were sued by a group of non-government organizations in a few states for missing their statutory obligation. So what's this all mean for North Carolina? Well, North Carolina recommended to EPA that the entire state be designated as attainment back in December of 2024. That recommendation stands. And if EPA is in fact going to proceed with designation soon, as suggested by their unified agenda that they released late last week, I expect EPA will be engaging with us fairly soon. Finally, DAQ will now, with this court decision with us, we will begin or continue work on North Carolina's Infrastructure State Implementation Plan, or ISIP, which is due to EPA next February. We are in good shape to meet that deadline. That's simply the instrument where we show that we have the rules, the authority, and the resources to continue implementing this standard. Yesterday in committee, I gave an update on the impacts of the 2026 budget bill on the division. Very positive, and we are grateful for the support that we received. And if you're interested in more on that, I refer you to the recording of yesterday's meeting. That's all for today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Questions for Director Aberson? Yes.
Just a comment, just to add on to the EPA air program. Their Assistant Administrator, Aaron Zabo, announced his departure at the end of next week.
Yes, I was also on the news this week. Thank you. All right, great. Thank you.
Executive Director, any comments or questions?
No additional comments or questions. Thank you.
Councilor Young, nothing for you. Let's roll around. Let's go to Commissioner Baumgartner for brief committee report and final remarks.
As I can relate to Toby discussing the Big Hungry River, well, I'll be brief. So we had two information items in groundwater committee yesterday. One was 15 NCAC 02T 1500 rules, which are soil remediation, and the petroleum, which is soil remediation for petroleum contaminated soils. That was an information item. Introducing the readoption for those proposed amendments. We also had another information item on 2L 100 and 0300 through 0300, and had some discussion on that. The 0200 proposed rules were posted with and without an IMAX standard in there. The chair directed that when this package came in for an action item in September, that the version without the IMAX come to the committee for consideration for vote by the committee. So that's what will happen in September, and that was the chair's directive. The chair also asked if the committee had any comments, and nobody had any comments. So that's what's coming to the committee, and that was expressed, and that's what's going to be moving forward next meeting. Other than that, that's all I have.
Questions, Mr. Bumber? Commissioner Ellison, any comments?
Yesterday, the Air Quality Committee moved two rules out of committee to the full EMC. One of them was the 0400 rules. If you remember, we had a petition for rulemaking. The department has folded that into the rest of the 0400 rules and brought that to us with a note. If there was a little bit of confusion in the language submitted by the petitioner, but that precise, with minor flaws, that precise language is what must go out for public comment. So it's understood that the after the public comment period, we can tweak that language so that it comports with the goals of the petition, which is something the department was going to do anyway. So I spent too much time talking about that. We also moved another set of rules for the group, what we're calling Group 1 rules for readoption. I didn't get a chance to ask the Assistant Secretary a question, but to bring up a refrain that Commissioner Yarborough has brought up several times, the emergency's not over until the money's spent. And the legislature has just provided more funds for additional Helene recovery. There are still funds, even before the new budget, there are still funds moving through the pipeline just because the process, especially when FEMA gets involved, is more convoluted than it ought to be. There's still tremendous need and there's still a lot of money coming. A lot of the stream bank erosion repairs, the private bridges, a lot of damage, tremendous damage caused by the hurricane was lower priority projects, especially the ecosystem improvement work that could be covered under a nationwide 27. But the Corps no longer has those emergency permit policies in place. They expired. And we have asked and talked about this before with the department, trying to get extensions to the Corps, because your 401 is tied to the Corps. And if the Corps lets their emergency practices expire, then you're in the same boat, basically. But so I encourage you to keep trying to work on that with the Corps. But I do commend you. The department was really good through the whole process. And I mean, immediately after the storm and through the whole thing. One last comment for perspective. Assistant Secretary Mazemore mentioned 20 million cubic yards of material. And Director Scott said it could be as high as 50 million. Well, doing easy math, because I'm not an engineer and that's all I can do. A triaxle dump truck that you see running up the street all the time, they can hold a little over 20 cubic yards. So if you got 1 million of those and they're 50 feet long and you stack them end to end and you have a new bridge, you could drive from Raleigh to Hawaii and back twice and still line them up all the way to Los Angeles. That's a mind-boggling amount of material, and the department has managed that pretty darn well. So thank you.
Jaspers.
Yes, first of all, congratulations to Director Rogers on your retirement. I envy you. And I want to sort of just reflect a little bit. I've completed now a full year on the EMC, Jennifer and Ann, we've completed a full year. Came on in September last year. And I just want to talk about a few wins. I think the flood resilience program that was presented to us yesterday is a great program, fantastic citizen sciences. The coastal habitat protection plans we saw today, really, really interesting. Want to congratulate you on showcasing some really interesting and innovative sort of solutions. Appreciate the lessons learned presentation from Sushma. How can we better prepare in the hurricane tropical storms? Really success stories. I think there's a lot to really sort of congratulate DEQ on that, what they've done. Also appreciated the comments from Secretary Wilson this morning about EPA recognizing the health risk of PFAS. The specific health risks that were mentioned are certainly supported by the science I'm aware of. Stopping PFAS at the source and also wanting to have numerical standards and regulating it at the source. So this is really, I think it's the sentiment that certainly many of us feel very, very passionate about. I also want to talk about some losses. I looked at in sort of coming to the meeting here this morning, I looked at what the EMC is all about. And the commission is responsible for adopting rules for the protection, preservation, and enhancement of the state's air, water resources. That's what we're charged with here. I personally feel like sometimes economic impacts are really driving what comes out of this commission. Health impacts are never included, and John Evans, maybe you can help me understand where this is coming from, why we don't have health impact analysis. Other states do, North Carolina does not. So I want to understand why that is. Why can't an RIA not include that as well? And then I also want to comment, and I mentioned it to John and JD directly. I don't appreciate comments that were made in front of the agricultural presentation that said something like, don't let science get in the way of good politics. That gets to my core. And I don't think that should be reflecting who we are and what we do. And I don't think it does. I know we talked about this, but it's just something that I don't think we need to sort of fall under. So that's a little bit of a loss to me. Overall, again, I think many more wins than losses, but I wanted to voice those. So thanks.
Just to add for the record, I didn't make that comment.
I know,
That was
and
made in jest by Paul Calamito, who was also at the hearing speaking, not by me. So don't.
I completely understand, but a comment like that cannot stand. And something needs to be said right afterwards, or something just needs to be rebutting it, because it's not the sentiment who we are.
Yeah, and we'll go.
And I understand you.
We'll go through. It was made in jest, and I don't control Paul Calamito or his organization. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Appreciate the comments.
But it wasn't made by anybody around this table. right?
No,
Just be clear.
Commissioner King.
For clarity, first, in reference to that comment, is she speaking of the conversation that was presented to the ag, or was it the email that was associated with that from the 4 members of the board?
No. She's talking about the committee that was the comments that I attended that commission. I was requested by senior member Jimmy Dixon to be there. And that's the comments that I made that was at that committee when I was speaking.
All right. I read a transcript, Mr. Chairman, and also read the rebuttal from 4 members of the board or the commission, and I just didn't know which one she was referring to.
Yeah, it was just.
Thank
those
you for the
comments.
clarity.
It's fine. And I didn't say it. So.
And just thank you for the
I didn't
clarity.
say it. So.
Okay. One action item yesterday, along with 2 information items, and they forwarded. But the one action item yesterday was a readoption and RIA division mitigation services. After in-depth discussion with questions and concerns, generous time was allowed for the amendments or substitute motions, Mr. Chairman, after appropriate motion and second. None were given. The request to move forward to the EMC was not approved. Path forward and staying in concert with the department's proposed adoption schedule on August 27th and meet the open meeting laws. I'm calling back the full committee for a special meeting in August with recorded transcript and all questions and concerns. The aim is to present the committee's decision at the EMC meeting in September, respectfully, sir, including a 30-day waiver if necessary. That's my report. Thank you, sir.
That is your prerogative. Thank you. Commissioner Orms-Avaleta.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again to the department and all of the staff for all of the material that you prepared getting ready for this meeting. I also want to say thank you for some added orientation briefings that I had asked for on mitigation and stormwater. So those extra efforts were really helpful. Director Rogers, all the best. I don't think you will be sorry. Retirement is a good thing if in fact you retire. Some of us haven't quite learned that, but we're working on it. But anyway, just, well done. And thank you again for all of your service and what you've done. And then one last comment, it was mentioned about the note that several of us pulled together to try to provide some additional information. And one thing I just want to encourage and reinforce and appreciate is, that we have a tremendous amount of talent and expertise around this horseshoe. And so please, please, please take advantage of all of us as a resource. So I'll leave it at that.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
So one comment first. Congratulations to Richard. I think I have known Richard for almost that entire 30-year career. And when we worked together, this will surprise no one, Richard was the good cop and I was the bad cop. It worked for us. I know. I know. It worked for us. So best wishes for retirement. It's fabulous. Not for us, but for you. The only other thing, I had a question about the way the stormwater rule issue was left in committee yesterday. As I heard it, the direction from the chair was for the staff to come back with what was called the skinny rule. So the rule with just clerical changes in the September meeting. The presentation from Mr. Evans that preceded that direction had laid out 3 different options to move those rules forward. And there was some discussion of stakeholder involvement. It was not clear to me, based on the direction that the chair gave yesterday, whether the working group is still working, whether there will be stakeholder input, or whether this is just going back to the Water Quality Committee to look at the skinny rule draft and go from there. So some clarity on that would probably be helpful.
Yeah, and Director Evans can give his interpretation, but I had talked to Director Evans about his 3, and I think his was consistent with mine, which was consistent with Commissioner Keene's. The work group has concluded that just to move on with that, what he calls the skinny rule adoption that would get us through RRC, and those bigger comments need to go to a stakeholder group. But the committee's not laid that out or the department or what that stakeholder group, but it would not be just the 3-person work group that was working on it before. It would be a bigger industry type thing as we did back in 2015. But I think the point that I left with was we want the department to bring back the things that have to be done as part of rules review and readoption. And I think Director Evans has given a good spreadsheet of, and Counselor Young has looked at some of that as well, of things we know will get through and need to be done, and other things that may not pass muster or will not pass muster. So Director Evans, you want to give any additional comments?
No, I think you summarized it very well.
Mr. Chairman, for clarity, if you go back to the recording, Commissioner Smith, my response to the chairman of the EMC, who was ex officio, was, I said, noted. So we move from there. Thank you.
We'll move from there. That's sufficient?
That answered my question.
Thank you.
I will just
Leaving it at that.
repeat my earlier concern that when there's a decision to be made among options, Mr. Evans presented 3 options to the committee yesterday for that rule package, that the selection of that option should be the committee's decision, and committees act by motions and votes. And I think that's the way we should assume committees will proceed. I didn't hear, and maybe I missed this, I did not hear Mr. Evans say yesterday that the working group had recommended a particular option. Perhaps they did. I don't recall hearing that, but in any event, that seemed like a decision that was appropriate for the committee to make as a committee in the ways that committees act.
I'll give you some update on by Roberts of small rule committees, and we'll go through that.
It was not.
It's
It was
okay.
information.
Okay. Mr. Tweedy.
I'll give a committee report, and then I've got 2 quick items too. This could be real quick for water allocation. We had 3 information items yesterday. The first was our kind of typical IBT update. Of most importance is or most action is the Fuquay Arena IBT, which the department is processing lots and lots of comments on that through the public comment period in development of a hearing officer's report. Some more to come on that. Flood resiliency blueprint. Secretary Wilson, I think, talked about that a little bit this morning, and important work there. So I think belabor that. And then the drought update, Director Rogers mentioned a little bit about that, so I don't feel like I need to go into that, other than to say, I don't think things have really improved in May, maybe in some minor locations. We're getting some thunderstorms here and there. That's really not going to change our situation. The positive side from Mr. Albertson's presentation was that we are in an El Nino year, we hope. So there will be hopefully more, typical pattern for that is more rainfall on the back end of the year. So hopefully there will be relief. Two other things. One is an idea. I shared this with Commissioner Reardon and Director Vinson after the dam safety rules today. There seems to be an opportunity here to marry the goals of resiliency that the state has with this need of a lot of failing private dams and dams on agricultural land. A lot of landowners can't afford to fix those dams. Dam construction and design is very expensive to do it to proper standards. But if there could be some funding assistance there, I think there's the opportunity to redesign some of those dams to provide more resiliency, more retention of flows, hold those flows for 2 or 3 days, release that water and attenuate that flood, not just to the benefit of the landowner of repairing that dam, but also to the downstream community. So I lob that to this group. There's a lot of smarter people than I am in this group. There's certainly a lot of people with more political influence than I have. So hopefully that's an idea that can reach traction. The second thing is a concern, and I'm going to put a sharper point on what Commissioner Smith said.
That is not possible for you.
See, yesterday or in May, I was appointed to the working group on stormwater rules that you've heard about. There, I've spent a lot of my time, Saturdays and Sundays, going over those rules, providing comments, talked a lot with Director Evans, talked a lot with the department staff during work hours. A lot of time on that. And I feel like the actions yesterday where the chair directed the staff on what was going to come back to committee in September kind of threw all that in the trash. I kind of take that personally. I don't think that's how a committee is supposed to function. It seems like if a chair, either of the commission or a committee, can make a unilateral decision like that with no committee discussion, no motion, no vote, then why do we have the committee in the first place? So a little irritated by that, but I'll leave my comments at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Wright, for a man that's building a house and has a young family, you sure have been patient today. So make you speak a little bit today. I know you're down there, got all kind of contractor things in your head, so.
Well, that's okay. No, I don't have anything further. Congratulations, Director Rogers. And thank you to everyone that presented today, and I'll keep it brief. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Reardon.
Only a couple of comments. Thank everybody for your presentations over the last 2 days. Director Rogers, thank you for your leadership over many, many years. I've only known you for the last couple of years, but you've been exceptional, and your patience is something that we can all desire for. So thank you for all you've done.
Okay. Couple final things from me. One is I mentioned the budget. And we've heard a lot about the budget. Dave had a great overview from Secretary Wilson today, and we've heard some other from the division directors. We will see final information on that next time. I know the division directors have even a better picture in their mind once they have a little bit more time, and I will too. So that's coming. But let's say this, with the session going out from a direction standpoint, I've been asked externally, what does it mean for monitoring minimization plans, the legislation? I don't know yet. I haven't studied it. I think there's technical corrections still to be made. So the charge is to the hearing officers, post haste, continue on. We have to get the public comments pulled together, and then we will make a decision by the commission, as we promised the public, that we will either take the hearing officer's recommendation, we'll modify it, or the EMC may do nothing. So we will have to make that decision, but we can't make that decision, I don't think, until we see the comments yet and make sure we understand the full depth of both the legislation and the comments that we get in. So modern administration, let's get it done. The same thing with the IBT. The way I read the legislation is Fuquay is accepted from that IBT legislation, but we're going to confirm that with council again and meet more with DEQ. But we need to keep that, and I know Kevin is keeping that moving and get that hearing officer's report to us per the process outlined in the statutes that we're obligated to meet. So other things, I think we'll talk more about that later. But let's leave it there with the IBTs. Two things, and I'll say this first. Stephanie Bolyard is leaving too. So she's left, I guess. Is she gone officially now? I believe she is, out of the secretary's office, and you guys know her from some of the PFAS debates and other things. I knew her back when she was at DOT before she came to the department. So it's been a long journey. She's off in with a Washington DC, I call it a think tank, but it's a research or some kind of organization like that, and she's happy. And so I congratulate her. She's not in the room. She was here earlier. And of course, Director Rogers, I've already talked to him. He will be missed. He really helped me as chair, and I hope I helped him to try to keep the trains, kind of running to the station every time for a number of years. And I appreciate all that he's done and the leadership he's provided with a kind of bigger picture of where all this has to fit. Because it's awful easy in all these disciplines to get down too far in the weeds, but he keeps us balanced, and we will miss him. So thank you for that, Richard. With that, I have nothing else. If there's nothing else for the good of the group, we will be adjourned. EMC members, lunch is in the hallway. Remissions are canceled as a reminder.